Chapter 2011. So far, Chu Luiyue had never really seen Emo Shirqian. Although they had confronted each other several times, Emo Shirqian had never shown his face. Chu Luiyue even heard his name from Rongxiao. However, the moment she heard this voice, Chu Luiyue knew. It must be him. Chu Luiyue held her breath, her heart beating violently, and blood seemed to flow under her eardrums. Previously, she had already guessed that this was the territory of the Black Demon Cave. But she never thought that Emo Shirqian would be here too. In that case, wasn't this the headquarters of the Black Demon Cave? So they were hiding here. Rongxiao raised his eyebrows, revealing a look of realization. No wonder he had sent people to investigate before. But there had been no results. Emo Shirqian was really capable. He had directly left the Divine Ruins world and came here. What a good idea. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue instantly understood Rongxiao's meaning and frowned slightly. So that was it. A few years ago, the Black Demon Cave suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if they had disappeared from the Divine Ruins world. Who knew? They were actually hiding outside the Divine Ruins world. In this world, who would have thought that they would make such a choice? Moreover, although they were outside the Divine Ruins world, this place was close to the Gate Realm, and the energy of heaven and earth was abundant. It was extremely suitable for cultivation, no different from the Divine Ruins world. If she had not come here today, who knew when she would have realized this? Understanding this, Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She knew very well that Emo Shirqian wanted to snatch her zither score. Previously, she had always thought that the Black Demon Cave had chosen to retreat because Rongxiao had personally come and severely injured them. They had made this decision in order to avoid the sharp edge and recuperate. But now, she vaguely felt that this guess seemed to be somewhat wrong. Greetings, Sect Master. On the other side, when Hong'an and the others heard this voice, their expressions changed, and they hurriedly bowed. Suddenly the world fell silent. All the noise seemed to have dissipated at this moment. The berserk energy that had been wreaking havoc everywhere stopped flowing. The vast space seemed to be frozen in place. Chu Luiyue could only hear the sound of his heart beating violently. Emo Shirqian's strength had obviously become more unfathomable. Finally, a cloud of black mist condensed in the air. A tall and straight figure stood there, faintly discernible like a ghost. Chu Luiyue held his breath. That person, it must be Emo Shirqian. However, in that instant just now, she actually didn't see clearly how he had appeared. In all directions the void was calm, as if it had frozen. The moment his figure appeared, the surrounding heaven and earth energy and space did not fluctuate at all. There was still a considerable distance between them. However, Chu Luiyue still felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on her chest, making it hard for her to breathe. This person's strength could only be described as terrifying. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue felt an extremely dangerous gaze fall on him. Her hair immediately stood on end. It had been a long time since she felt like she was walking between life and death. At this moment, a warm and broad palm slowly grasped her hand. The warmth of the iron kept coming from above. A faint cold fragrance assaulted her, almost surrounding her. Rongxiao, he was still here. She looked up. The two of them looked at each other. Rongxiao smiled slightly and gave her a reassuring look. Chu Luiyue's heart instantly calmed down. No matter what danger she encountered or what situation she was in, he would always be by her side to protect her. Chu Luiyue blinked gently. That gaze finally moved away from her. Emo Shirqian frowned slightly. Could it be that moment just now was an illusion? Putting those thoughts away, he looked up again and gazed ahead. I haven't been out for a while. I didn't expect you to give me such a big gift. He spoke slowly, his voice calm and emotionless. However, in the ears of Hong'an and the rest, these words were no different from a life and death warning. Domin took a deep breath and said, "It's all because of our incompetence to disturb Sect Master. Please punish us." In the end, the worst situation had occurred. But at this time, there was no other way. Life and death were all in the hands of Master. Emo Shirqian ignored him and only raised his hand. Of course, when he did this, his hand was still wrapped in a layer of black fog. No one could see anything clearly. Then, Chang Wanzhou's body was pulled up by this shocking force. At this moment, A few of his ribs were broken, and he had suffered some internal injuries. His entire body was covered in blood and dust, and he looked extremely miserable. He was on the verge of death, and looked like he was about to die at any moment. However, he still held the Cloud Sky Copper sword tightly in his hand. Rank 9 warrior? Emo Shurtian's voice suddenly carried a hint of a smile. Do-min, you're getting more and more promising. Do-min's face was pale. As a god after attacking, his move was actually broken by a rank 9 warrior. If word got out, even he himself would feel embarrassed. He wanted to defend himself, but when he thought about how this person hated these things the most, he gave up in the end. He just stood there trembling in fear, waiting for the final result. Chang Wanzhou's body seemed to be supported by an invisible force as he floated quietly in the air. Emo Shurtian looked at him carefully. Your talent is not bad. Suddenly his voice paused. He seemed to have discovered something as his fingers moved slightly. At this moment, Chang Wanzhou finally opened his eyes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2012. His eyes were filled with wariness. His entire body was tense, as if he was prepared to attack at any moment. However, such actions and threats were not worth mentioning in Emo Shurtian's eyes. He would not take a rank 9 warrior seriously, even if this young man forcefully withstood Do-min's attack. It was just a small matter in Emo Shurtian's eyes. He raised his wrist gently. A strong force assaulted him. Chang Wanzhou's elbow went numb, and he involuntarily let go. The Cloud Sky Copper sword flew forward. Chang Wanzhou's expression immediately turned stern. You! Just as he opened his mouth, he felt as if an invisible hand was strangling his neck. His voice stopped abruptly, and his originally pale face quickly flushed red. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great. Furthermore, he was injured and could not fight against the other party at all. Hence, he could only watch as the Cloud Sky Copper sword landed in Emo Shurtian's hands. Everyone was silent. The world was so cold and solemn that it seemed to have been completely frozen. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Emo Shurtian. Shock, reverence, fear, all sorts of emotions filled everyone's hearts. That terrifying oppressive might made it, so that they couldn't even speak a single word. Seeing Emo Shurtian's actions, Chu Luiyue slowly clenched his fists. This aura is very familiar. Emo Shurtian weighed the Cloud Sky Copper sword. After looking at it repeatedly, he confirmed his guess. He looked up at Chang Wanzhou again. You're her man. This was not a question but a statement. He did not say who this she was. However, the meaning of his words could not be more obvious. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips tightly and did not say anything. However, Emo Shurtian clearly did not need his answer. He would definitely not be wrong about this person's aura. Interesting. Indeed, like master, like servant. Emo Shurtian laughed, but there was no smile in his words. Chu Luiyue was not afraid of death, and so was this young man. He actually barged in here. Who let him in? Emo Shurtian suddenly asked. Hong En's legs turned to jelly, and he looked at Do-min for help. At this time, he would only have a chance of survival if Do-min spoke up for him. However, at this moment, Do-min suddenly turned around and looked at him with furrowed brows. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear the sect leader's question? Hong En was stunned, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Do-min had already turned around and bowed. Replying to sect master, Hong En is fully in charge of this trial. Hong En's mind went blank. Do-min continued to speak with a pained and regretful expression. Back then, it was this subordinate's fault for choosing him. I didn't expect him to do such a thing. He deserved to be killed. This subordinate did not investigate properly. It is also a dereliction of duty. Sect leader, please punish me. His words sounded like he was asking for forgiveness, but in fact, he was pushing all the blame to Hong En. Do-min knew very well that he would definitely not be able to escape safely this time with such a big commotion. But at the very least, he had to protect his own life. As for Hong En at this time, he could not even protect himself. How could he care about him? Hong En did not expect that Do-min, who had always favored him, would not leave him any leeway at this critical moment. He even pushed him behind his back. Did he think that he would not die quickly enough? For a moment, Hongin was also enraged. He immediately said, "Sect leader, please investigate. This subordinate is really wronged in this matter." This subordinate? You did very well. Emo Shurqian was impatient to listen to their excuses, so he interrupted Hongin. Although he had been resting earlier, he was aware of everything that had happened. He was also very clear about what they were planning in their hearts. Now, he did not have the time to deal with this. Hongin was stunned. The two people beside him were also shocked. What did the sect leader say just now? He said he did very well? Hongin almost thought that he was hallucinating. He looked up in disbelief and glanced at Emo Shurqian. However, with just a glance, he sensed a warning and hurriedly lowered his head. It's a felony to bring them back in advance. However, this time it's considered a crime. Emo Shurqian's meaning was very clear. It was because of this golden-haired youth that he did not intend to pursue Hong An's mistake. Hongin was shocked and confused, but more than that, he was happy to have survived a disaster. According to the sect leader, he would not die. In fact, he might not even be punished. And all this was because he brought back the golden-haired youth? Do Min was embarrassed. Emo Shurqian's words were undoubtedly like a slap to his face. But what was the background of that golden-haired youth that the sect leader valued him so much? They were not the only ones. At this moment, almost everyone had the same question in their hearts. This golden-haired youth's talent and strength were not bad, but it did not seem to be to an exaggerated extent. Moreover, he had tried to fight Emo Shurqian just now. Such a person usually only had a dead end. What did he have that Emo Shurqian valued? Could it be that sword? Emo Shurqian put away the sword and sized up Chang Wanzhou again. Although this cloud sky copper sword was not a top-grade divine artifact, it was obvious that a lot of effort had been put into it. Chu Luiyue was willing to give this sword to him. It could be seen that this golden-haired youth had a close relationship with her. She can be said to be in the limelight now. Emo Shurqian muttered thoughtfully and chuckled. If she knows that you are in my hands, I wonder how she will react. She would not be in a good mood. Chang Wanzhou stared at the figure in front of him. Due to the black fog, he could not see the other party's appearance clearly. He could only see the rough outline of the figure. He knew that the other party was extremely strong. He had not felt such a dangerous aura for a long time. Emo Shurqian asked, "What's your name?" Chang Wanzhou did not speak. Emo Shurqian smiled. "Do you think I can't do anything to you like this?" This golden-haired youth's appearance was extremely eye-catching. It was not difficult to find out his identity after asking around. Emo Shurqian's gaze landed on the crowd below. That sharp and cold gaze was like a blade that cut across their bodies. Some people's legs went weak, and they could barely stand. "Whoever can tell me this person's name and background, I will reward you handsomely," Emo Shurqian said. Everyone was dead silent. No one answered. Not to mention that they did not know. Even if they did, they could not say it out loud. Chang Wanzhou had just saved their lives. Emo Shurqian's expression darkened as he smiled faintly. "Oh, you don't want to say it?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2013. Dead silence. The atmosphere became even colder. Emo Shurqian moved his fingertips. A young man flew up. "What's his name?" Emo Shurqian asked. The young man's face was pale as he shook his head in panic. "I don't know." Bang. As soon as he finished speaking, there was an explosion. It was the young man's body that suddenly exploded. Without any warning. It was extremely violent. He didn't even have time to beg for mercy or cry out in pain before he died. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. It was a shocking sight. This sudden scene caused everyone's hearts to tremble violently. Many people's expressions changed. Chu Luiyue also frowned. She knew that Emo Shurqian had always been ruthless. But she didn't expect him to be so. "Ah!" A scream was heard. Xilan was suddenly caught by Emo Shurqian. "What's his name?" Emo Shurqian continued to ask. Obviously, he was just randomly picking someone to ask. If she answered that she didn't know or didn't say anything, she would probably die. Xilan's face was as pale as a ghost. When had she ever encountered such a scene? Thinking of the miserable death of the young man just now, she was so scared that her teeth were chattering. Who was that golden-haired young man? What was his background? She really didn't know. Ziji's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his face was filled with despair. This time he was afraid. Chang Wanzhou. At this moment, a clear and calm voice suddenly came from behind the crowd. Everyone looked over, but they were all stunned. The person who spoke was an ordinary-looking young woman. At this moment, she was looking up at the sky. He's from the Tianling dynasty. Ziji opened his mouth and looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. She knew. She actually knew. Then what was her identity? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, causing Ziji to fall into deep confusion. The next moment, Xilan's body suddenly flew backward. Ziji hurried forward and barely caught her. The powerful impact made Ziji fall heavily to the ground. The sound of bones breaking was heard. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Xilan's situation wasn't any better. Both of them were in a sorry state. But even so, he still managed to keep his life. Some people looked at Chu Luiyue with undisguised anger. Obviously, in their eyes, Chu Luiyue had betrayed Chang Wanzhou by taking the initiative to answer. However, Chu Luiyue turned a blind eye to these gazes. She had her own plans. Mo Shiqian turned his gaze to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes slightly. "Come here," Mo Shiqian said. Chu Luiyue walked forward. The others stared at her. Although they had different thoughts, they were afraid of Mo Shiqian and did not dare to say anything at this moment. Rongxiu did not follow. In this almost suffocating atmosphere, Chu Luiyue walked to the front of the crowd. "I said come here." Mo Shiqian's hoarse and deep voice sounded like a death knell. Chu Luiyue seemed to hesitate for a moment before finally moving forward. In the end, she walked up to Mo Shiqian step by step. There were only 10 steps between the two of them. Beside her was Chang Wanzhou. Chang Wanzhou turned his head and glanced at her indifferently. That gaze was extremely unfamiliar. It was cold and heavy, and it even carried a trace of extremely faint anger. He didn't seem to understand why this person had exposed his identity. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to notice his gaze, and bowed to Mo Shiqian. Mo Shiqian asked, "Do you know him?" Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes. Yes. Mo Shiqian was a little interested. Someone from the Tianling dynasty. No wonder. Wasn't that person from the Tianling dynasty? He sized up Chang Wanzhou again. "I know that she has the 13 Yu guards by her side, and recently, she brought a few of them to the Divine Ruins world. All of them are doing well and are famous. I remember that there's no one like you among the 13 Yu guards, right?" Previously, he had spent a lot of effort investigating Chu Luiyue, and was quite familiar with the 13 Yu guards. He didn't have any impression of the name Chang Wanzhou. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips tightly, still uncooperative. Mo Shiqian didn't care, and turned to look at Chu Luiyue. "You said you know him then. Who are you?" Chang Wanzhou's identity was not simple. Those who knew his name and background should not be ordinary people. Mo Shiqian's scrutinizing gaze enveloped Chu Luiyue. She smiled slightly. Because of this smile, that ordinary face suddenly had a different kind of elegance. A pair of black jade-like eyes were filled with fine starlight. Mo Shiqian suddenly felt that something was wrong. At this moment, a ball of reddish-gold flames suddenly burst out from her body. A shocking and terrifying pressure spread crazily towards the surroundings. Under the flames, a beautiful and thin soft armor quickly covered her entire body. Swoosh! A snow-white longsword pierced through the air. A clear shout suddenly spread far and wide between the heavens and the earth. "Who am I?" Mo Shiqian, you should know best. Before she finished speaking, Chu Luiyue's figure had already disappeared from the spot. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Everyone only saw a piercing sword light wrapped in reddish gold flames cross the sky and charge straight at Mo Shiqian. Mo Shiqian roared in shock and anger. "Shangguanyu! Shangguanyu!" Hearing this name, everyone present was shocked. Wasn't that the princess of the Tianling dynasty? The rumored one who had already entered the Divine Ruins world? Why did she suddenly appear here? Ziji and Xilan looked at each other, and saw the deep shock in each other's eyes. So that woman was Shangguanyu? That man Swoosh? Before they could figure it out, Rongxiu's figure had disappeared without a trace. The next moment, he suddenly appeared behind Mo Shiqian. His thin scarlet lips curled up slightly as if he was smiling, but there was a hint of coldness at the corners of his eyes. Emo Shurqian, how have you been? As early as when Chu Luyue started to make a move, Emo Shurqian had already expected that Rong Xiu would be here too. He was about to turn around when an extremely cold aura came towards him. Emo Shurqian's heart sank. Previously, he already knew what happened at Peach Blossom Dock. He also knew that Yi Wentao had been defeated by Chu Luyue. But at that time, he had thought that Chu Luyue had used some tricks to finally win that bet. But now, facing Chu Luyue's attack, he suddenly realized this woman's strength had indeed exceeded his expectations. Almost at the same time, Chang Wanzhou suddenly moved. A shocking aura erupted from his body. Emo Shurqian was even more shocked and furious. Exalted goddess. He had not noticed it at all before. In the blink of an eye, the three of them had surrounded Emo Shurqian. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2014. Moreover, one of them was a venerable god, and the other two were exalted gods. Under normal circumstances, even if three venerable gods fought him at the same time, he would definitely win. However, among the three of them, apart from Chang Wanzhou, one was Chu Luyue and the other was Rong Xiu. These two people were not easy to deal with. In a flash, Chu Luyue's sword aura had already landed. Emo Shurqian could not dodge, and could only choose to fight head-on. With a flick of his wrist, the black mist around him quickly condensed into a long saber. The long saber was solid and suffused with a dark light. There was a faint scarlet color on it, as if it was outlining some kind of pattern. Clang! The two of them fought in close combat. Swish! The sharp sound of weapons scraping could be heard. Flames splattered everywhere. The powerful force made Chu Luyue's hand go numb. She focused her eyes and saw that the pattern on Emo Shurqian's long saber was the totem of the Black Demon Cave. I was thinking of what method to use to lure you out of Peach Blossom Dock. I didn't expect you to come by yourself. Emo Shurqian smiled coldly and swung his saber. When he moved, the surrounding space quickly distorted. Chu Luyue did not want to fight. When Emo Shurqian's long saber was about to swing over, she used the force to retreat. Swish! A black spatial crack tore open in front of Chu Luyue. Her eyes were cold, and the reddish-gold flames quickly turned into a huge reddish-gold phoenix. Chu Luyue leaped onto Dumpling's back. Whoosh! Dumpling flapped her wings and flew up. Chu Luyue's mind raced. She had just wanted to test Emo Shurqian's strength. He was a venerable god, and he had reached the absolute peak. Chu Luyue had fought with Yi Wentao before. In the Divine Ruins world, Yi Wentao was already publicly recognized as one of the best among the supreme gods. And Emo Shurqian in front of him was much stronger than him. With her own strength, she was definitely not a match for him. She had used 80% of her strength in that attack, but she hadn't hurt Emo Shurqian at all. That day, she was able to beat Yi Wentao because she had the advantage of time, place, and people. But today was different. This was Emo Shurqian's territory. Just as Emo Shurqian was about to chase after her, a cold wind suddenly came from behind. He knew something was wrong, and immediately turned around. An extremely thin golden thread quickly flew over, and wrapped around the long saber in his hand. Clang! Rong Xiu pulled his wrist, and the golden thread immediately tightened. Emo Shurqian knew Rong Xiu's strength. Seeing this, he let go of his hand without hesitation, and threw the long saber out. Bang! A violent explosion was heard. It was Rong Xiu's finger pressing on the golden thread, and he suddenly moved it. The golden thread trembled, and the long saber connected to it was instantly reduced to dust by a terrifying force. The battle in the sky erupted fiercely. The onlookers were all shocked on the spot. At this moment, Domin's reaction was extremely fast. Seeing that the people over there had already started fighting, he immediately shouted sternly, "Everyone listen up. Attack immediately, and take down these three people." With that, he took the lead and rushed over. Although the sect leader was powerful, he couldn't justify being besieged in his own territory. However, before he arrived, Rong Xiu waved his sleeve. Boom! The golden flames were like a torrent, gushing out endlessly, forming a huge golden barrier in the sky, encircling the few of them. Domin was immediately isolated. The golden flames were resplendent and tightly blocked everyone's vision. Do-min crossed his hands in front of him. A Xian formation quickly gathered in front of him. Roar! A deep tiger's roar instantly reverberated through the air. However, before he could make a move, a clear phoenix cry came from within the barrier. Bang! The powerful bloodline pressure from the ancient divine beast immediately suppressed the tiger roar above the Xian formation. The illusion that was forming also shattered with a loud bang. When Do-min heard the phoenix cry, he knew that something was wrong. However, before he could retreat, the Xian formation had already collapsed in front of him. His face paled, and the thick smell of blood instantly surged up his throat. Crimson gold heavenly phoenix! Hong'an exclaimed in shock. Even though they were outside, and couldn't see what was going on inside, they still saw it clearly when the crimson gold heavenly phoenix appeared. Iziji and the others standing below didn't know what happened in the divine ruins world. It was normal for them to be shocked when they saw this scene. However, these things they knew. Do-min was also filled with regret. He only wanted to atone for his mistake by meritorious service. But he forgot that Chu Luiyue wasn't easy to deal with. The one she contracted was not only a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, but it was also the young master of the crimson gold sky phoenix clan. She could defeat Yi Wentao, so her strength naturally couldn't be underestimated. The scorching hot temperature came from the barrier, causing Do-min to be even more frightened. He tried a few more times, but he realized that it was difficult to even get close to the barrier, let alone open it. At this moment, people rushed over one after another and surrounded the huge barrier. However, they were completely helpless against the spirit formation. What should we do? Someone asked. Do-min's brows were tightly knitted. Everyone be on guard. Seal all the barriers. Don't allow anyone to enter or leave. Once they come out, immediately attack. He originally thought of everyone joining forces to forcefully break the barrier from the outside. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that this method wouldn't work at all. After all, the sect master was still inside. If they were slightly careless, he was afraid that they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Now they could only hope that the sect master could come out first. Hall Master Do-min, what about those people? Hong'an turned around to take a look, and some impatience appeared on his face. Lock them all up first. At this time, who still had the mood to think about these people? Yes, in the Black Demon Cave, other than Emo Shirqian, who was the sect master, the ones with the most authority were the few hall masters. When the incident happened, Do-min happened to be present, so everyone subconsciously respected him. Although there were some problems before, compared to the current situation, it was not worth mentioning. Almost no one cared. Therefore, under Do-min's command, the entire Black Demon Cave quickly became alert. Everyone used the space formed by the huge golden barrier as the center, layer by layer, and waited. Hall Master Do-min, the sect master is fighting 1 against 3. Will he be fine? Everyone was still a little worried about this. Especially since Rong Xiu is also here. The person who spoke lowered his voice. Do-min's expression was also a little solemn. Others were fine, but Rong Xiu, he was a real killing god. A few years ago, countless people in the Black Demon Cave had died at his hands. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2015. Things are different now. The sect master's strength has increased greatly. They can't hurt him easily. Do-min hesitated for a moment before speaking in a low voice. Moreover, don't forget where we are. This is the territory of the Black Demon Cave. How can anyone be so presumptuous? The reason why they suffered a huge loss at Rong Xiu's hands a few years ago was that the sect master was in seclusion at that time and couldn't take any action. On the other hand, they were caught off guard and weren't prepared. But it was different now. The sect master could fight, and they had the relevant experience. This time, that kind of thing would not happen again. Hearing his words, everyone nodded and looked at the golden boundary. They began a long and torturous wait. Inside the boundary, Emo Shirqian glanced at the long saber that had turned into powder in an instant. His eyes were cold. Rong Xiu's strength was obviously stronger than before. You guys have hidden yourselves well. I have really underestimated you guys. Mo Shurtian's voice was filled with anger. He had felt that something was wrong before, but he did not think too much about it, because he did not expect that the two of them would really come here directly. For the past few years, he and the entire Black Demon Cave had been hiding here, and had never been exposed. He knew that Rongxiu had used many methods to investigate, but they were all in vain. Who knew? Mo Shurtian suddenly thought of something and his heart sank. You broke through the Peach Blossom Docks Gate realm. Other than this, he could not think of any other possibility. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. There was indeed something wrong with the Gate realm, and it had something to do with Mo Shurtian. Peach Blossom Dock is already mine. Mo Shurtian, what's the point of asking these questions? Chu Luiyue said slowly. On the day your Black Sword sect was completely annihilated, you should have expected this day to come. Mo Shurtian sneered. After occupying Peach Blossom Dock and defeating Yi Wentao, you are indeed more confident in your words. After those things happened, he was indeed quite shocked. But he was busy at that time, so he put these things aside for the time being. Who would have thought that in such a short period of time, they would actually kill their way here? You dare to come here directly? You sure have guts. That's what you said the last time I charged into the Black Demon Cave. Rongxiu suddenly opened his mouth. His tone was lazy, and his expression was undisciplined. Mo Shurtian, you can change your line. You. Mo Shurtian was furious. However, he could not refute Rongxiu's words. Last time, he had indeed suffered a great loss at the hands of Rongxiu. Suddenly, a figure came closer. Chu Luiyue turned his gaze to Chang Wanzhou. At this moment, the injuries on his body were almost completely healed. He looked dispirited and listless before, but in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have become a completely different person. He was already a high god. Even Chu Luiyue was surprised by this. Outside the Divine Ruins world, wanting to break through this layer of shackles was not easy. She asked softly, Little Zhou, when did you break through to high god? Chang Wanzhou looked at her. His exquisite and beautiful face was still stained with blood. A moment of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Swish. The sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up, and his pupils constricted. The black mist on Mo Shurtian's body suddenly began to surge rapidly. A cold and bloody aura kept spreading. Then two more figures appeared behind Mo Shurtian. There were two people who looked exactly like him. Thousand Shadows' divine body. Digression. Khan, sort out the outline and adjust the update time. Starting at noon tomorrow, the update will start at 5 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2016. The Thousand Shadows Divine Body was a legendary and extremely powerful divine body cultivation method. It was rumored that this divine body had been lost for a long time. Even Chu Luiyue, who had read countless related materials in Lingxiao College, had only vaguely heard of this name. As for the specific method of cultivation, she did not know. She did not expect to encounter it here today. Looking at the three identical figures, Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. The Thousand Shadows divine body was powerful, because the cultivator could refine more than one divine body. As one's own strength increased, the number of divine bodies one could possess would also increase. It was undoubtedly a great advantage when fighting with others. More importantly, the divine bodies that were cultivated possessed the same strength as the cultivator himself. In other words, the current situation was equivalent to three Mo Shurtians fighting against the three of them. The advantage of 3 against 1 was instantly disintegrated. When the three Mo Shurtians stood on the spot at the same time, the thick layer of black fog also divided into 3 parts and surrounded each of them. The black fog seemed to have thinned a little, but Mo Shurtian's face could not be seen clearly. However, even so, Chu Luiyue could still feel the cold and sinister eyes staring at her. It's good that you're here. I want to see how powerful Peach Blossom Docks Lord Yu is now. As Mo Shurtian spoke, he dashed towards Chu Luiyue. However, as soon as he moved, a golden thread instantly flew toward him. Mo Shurtian's eyes sharpened, and he immediately dodged. In just a moment, Rongxiu had already appeared in front of Chu Luiyue. His snow-white robe fluttered in the wind. There seemed to be a smile on his incomparably noble face, but his deep and cold eyes were filled with bone-chilling coldness. Emo Shurtian, your opponent is me. With that, Rongxiu raised his hand and golden flames gushed out from his palm. Although the two divine bodies that appeared had the same strength as Emo Shurtian, only by killing the real Emo Shurtian could it be considered a complete end. Emo Shurtian gritted his teeth. Originally, he wanted to make a move on Chu Luyue. However, with Rongxiu's protection, there was no way he could do anything for the time being, unless he could get rid of Rongxiu first. Good. Since that's the case, let's settle the old and new scores together. As soon as he finished speaking, Emo Shurtian's aura soared again. Whoosh! He waved his arm, and a black and red scythe appeared in his hand. Chu Luyue recognized at a glance that this was not the long saber from before. It was condensed from the strange black fog around him. This was a real divine artifact. Furthermore, the pressure on it was extremely strong. Suddenly, a white light flashed in Chu Luyue's mind. This was not a venerable artifact. This was a real, sacred artifact. 9 Nether Scythe. Emo Shurtian raised the sickle in his hand. In an instant, a cold and gloomy killing intent quickly spread out from within. A thin layer of blood-red frost quickly covered it. Whoosh! The sickle fell, and a sea of blood surged. Rongxiu waved his sleeve, and the golden flame flew out quickly. Boom! 2 strong and bright colors instantly collided in midair and exploded. On the other side, Emo Shurtian's divine bodies also began to move separately. One went straight to Chang Wanzhou, while the other jumped from the side and came behind Chu Luyue and Rongxiu. Chu Luyue quickly turned around. She frowned slightly, and then put away the red cloud sword. Standing opposite her, Emo Shurtian frowned, and then seemed to show a strange smile. His laughter was hoarse and low. It seems that you're quite prepared. Even his voice and tone were no different from the real Emo Shurtian. Chu Luyue raised her vigilance to the highest. From a certain perspective, this was equivalent to fighting with Emo Shurtian. Emo Shurtian's strength was obviously above Yuan Tao's. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to defeat him. However, Chu Luyue did not expect to win this battle. What she needed to do now was to stall for time. Whoosh! The flowing cloud flying diagram flew out of her hand. The red scroll was unfolded, and Chu Luyue's fair and slender hand quickly skimmed over it. Soon, several Xian formations appeared in front of her one after another. Seeing this scene, a trace of surprise finally flashed across Emo Shurtian's eyes. He knew that Nan Yifan had died in Peach Blossom Dock not long ago, and that the flowing cloud flying diagram had fallen into Chu Luyue's hands and become her possession. However, before Chu Luyue became the owner of the flowing cloud flying diagram, the flowing cloud flying diagram had never displayed its true combat power in the past 1,000 years. Therefore, it was the first time Emo Shurtian had seen such a scene. The flowing cloud flying diagram. You're using it well. It was obviously impossible to say that he was unperturbed. Back then he had the chance to obtain this thing. Unfortunately, like the rest of the world, he thought that the flowing cloud flying diagram was only a sacred artifact for escaping, so he didn't take it to heart. Now that he thought about it, however, Emo Shurtian also understood that artifacts of this level actually had spiritual energy. Otherwise, it wouldn't have lasted for such a long time before displaying its true power in Chu Luyue's hands. A cold smile appeared on Chu Luyue's lips. You flatter me. With that, with a thought, the Xian formations quickly flew forward and surrounded Emo Shurtian. On the other side, Chang Wanzhou had already started fighting with Emo Shurtian's Thousand Shadows divine body. To be fair, an exalted god like Chang Wanzhou was definitely no match for Emo Shurtian. Even Chang Wanzhou himself admitted this. Therefore, from the moment the two of them started fighting, Chang Wanzhou had already decided not to fight Emo Shurtian head-on. When the scene was in chaos earlier, Emo Shurtian had casually thrown the Cloud Sky Copper sword out, and he had quickly snatched it back. At this moment, Chang Wanzhou was holding the Cloud Sky Copper sword, and only chose to attack from the side. Although he was not as strong as Emo Shurtian, he was agile. Every time Emo Shurtian planned to kill him, Chang Wanzhou would escape first. The two of them fell into an anxious battle. Time ticked by second. The golden barrier was extremely tight, so much so that no one outside could see what was happening inside. Not even a sound could be heard. Gradually, the people who were waiting started to feel restless and uneasy. I wonder what's going on inside. Sect Master is at a disadvantage fighting the three of them. That might not be the case. Sect Master has just come out of seclusion, and his strength has increased greatly. He might not lose to them. That's right. Besides, don't forget that Sect Master cultivates the Thousand Shadows divine body. Even if the three of them join forces, they might not be able to gain any advantage from Sect Master. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2017. At the mention of this, everyone's restless hearts finally calmed down. Ever since they suffered a great loss at the hands of Rong Xiu a few years ago, the entire Black Demon Cave had been recuperating. The sect leader had been cultivating in seclusion all year round, and his strength had greatly increased. Now that they were facing each other again, it was still unknown who would win. Family E. The remote and quiet courtyard was deserted and cheerless. Only one elder stood in front of the door, guarding it out of boredom. Ever since Yi Wentao returned, he had been staying in this room and had never come out. The other members of the family E had not come either. Of course, except for Jun Jiuqing, who was now the family head. However, he had only come once. The entire family E seemed to have forgotten that Yi Wentao was here. No one came here, and it was very quiet. No one would have thought that Yi Wentao, who had dominated the family E for hundreds of years, would end up like this. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking came from inside. The elder on guard frowned and went forward to ask, "What's wrong, family head?" After many years of habit, he still called Yi Wentao family head. However, they all understood that this word was meaningless to the current Yi Wentao. "It's fine. I hit the corner of the table and broke a cup." After a moment, Yi Wentao's somewhat suppressed and cold voice was heard. The elder on guard nodded in understanding. "Please be careful." He had no intention of going in to clean up. He was the only one in charge of guarding the entire courtyard. If nothing important happened, he would not leave his position at will. Besides, breaking a cup was indeed a small matter. After saying that, he looked away. Inside the room, Yi Wentao sat on a chair. On the ground in front of him was the table that he had just kicked over. The tea stains were scattered all over the floor, and the teacup was broken. Beside him, a man in black knelt. Yi Wentao's chest rose and fell violently, and his eyes seemed to be burning with anger. It was obvious how angry he was at this moment. "Can't contact him? What is the meaning of this?" He lowered his voice, but it was not difficult to hear the strong anger in his words. The black-clothed man still kept his head down. "We've already sent 3 messages in a row, but there's still no reply from the other side." Yi Wentao took a deep breath and closed his eyes. In fact, he had long understood the meaning of these words. He just didn't want to believe it. Was the Black Demon Cave planning to ignore him? Yi Wentao tried his best to calm the surging emotions in his heart, but it was very difficult. The Black Demon Cave was his last hope. A few days ago, Jun Jiuqing came over and asked him the same question. At that time, he seemed to have compromised and told him everything about the armillary shield, but in fact he hated Jun Jiuqing to the core. From his point of view, Jun Jiuqing had the ambition of a wolf. He had long planned to take over the position of the family head. While he was trapped in the Peach Blossom Cove, he forcefully took action and easily became the new head of the family E. Now Jun Jiuqing was high and mighty, but what about him? He had been reduced to such a state that he could not even freely enter and leave this courtyard. Yes, Jun Jiuqing was the successor that he had personally selected, but at that time, how could he have known that Jun Jiuqing was such a person? He could only blame himself for being blinded. He had actually been fooled. To think that he had personally handed the token to Jun Jiuqing. Thinking about it now, it was extremely ironic. Of course, Yi Wentao was not going to sit still and wait for death. Therefore, after a few years of hibernation, he finally contacted his loyalists again. Of course, he had his ways. The black-clothed man in front of him was one of them. What Jun Jiuqing wanted was actually very simple. He wanted to regain everything that he had lost, to restore his strength, and retake the family Yi. However, it was easier said than done. No matter which of these two things, to the current him, it was almost impossible for him to accomplish them. Therefore, from the beginning, he wanted to rely on external forces. This external force was naturally the Black Demon Cave. In the past few years, in order to avoid Rong Xiu's investigation, he had been very careful and had cut off contact with his loyalists. Until this time, there was really no other way. Moreover, he had already fallen out with Rong Xiu. Even if he knew about this, there was nothing to be afraid of. Now that he had nothing, what was there to be afraid of? But he did not expect that his desperate gamble of summoning loyalists and asking them to contact the Black Demon Cave would result in such a result. Obviously, without the help of that person, he would never be able to turn the tables. That was why Yi Wentao was so flustered and exasperated. When Rong Xiu attacked the Black Demon Cave, if I had not sent several loyalists to help, how could they have had time to leave so smoothly? Now they have turned against me. As he spoke, Yi Wentao coughed again. His face was still very pale, and there was a bloody and sweet taste in his mouth. Seeing this, the black-clothed man kneeling below asked worriedly, "Master, your body?" Yi Wentao shook his head. "I'm already recovering. I'll be fine after a while." His voice still sounded a little weak. The previous battle had exhausted him too much. The few days when he was locked up in Peach Blossom Dock were even more devastating. If not for his good foundation, he would not have been able to hold on. "Contact him again." The black-clothed man hesitated for a moment. "Master, could it be that something has happened on the other side as well?" Yi Wentao frowned. "What?" "I personally think that even if the other side does not want to help, they would at least let me know, and would not be so unresponsive. Also, that person should know about the current situation of Family E and the Nan family, but until now, they have not done anything. This, don't you think it's strange?" Yi Wentao did not think so at first, but after hearing what he said, he instantly felt that something was wrong. He stood up and paced around the room, frowning and thinking for a long time. That's right. Both the Nan family and Family E were in trouble. That person would definitely not be indifferent. After all, he was the one standing behind these two families. Now, he and Nan Yifan had been defeated. To a certain extent, it was also a humiliation to that person. How could he tolerate it? Perhaps that person is still in seclusion? In the past few years, Yi Wentao had rarely contacted that person. He only knew that he spent most of his time in seclusion cultivating. No, if that's the case, the people below would not be indifferent. Yi Wentao suddenly stood still and opened his eyes wide. "I'm afraid that something has really happened in Black Demon Cave." He turned his mind and looked at the black-clothed man. "Have you been noticed by anyone recently when you came?" The black-clothed man immediately said, "No, I've always been cautious and did not dare to make the slightest mistake." Yi Wentao was still worried. He paused and asked again, "What's the situation at Peach Blossom Dock in Yuntian Tower?" The black-clothed man shook his head. "It seems that everything is normal. I haven't heard any news recently." Yi Wentao's heart suddenly sank. Something has happened. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2018. At this moment, familiar footsteps came from outside. Yi Wentao was shocked. The elder in charge of guarding the door had already spoken. "Greetings, master. Jun Jiuqing. Why is he here all of a sudden?" Yi Wentao frowned, and immediately turned around to give the man in black a look. The figure of the black-clothed person flashed, and disappeared on the spot. Jun Jiuqing's voice was as casual as ever. "I haven't been here for a few days and missed you. I thought I'd drop by to take a look." At this moment, he had already walked to the door and looked inside. "How's the situation?" The elder hurriedly said. "Everything is normal. It's just that master seems to be in a bad mood today." Jun Jiuqing smiled. "Is that so? All the more reason to go in and take a look." With that, he pushed the door open and entered. The room was very quiet, and there was a faint bitter medicinal fragrance. Although Jun Jiuqing hadn't been here for a few days, He had always sent people to deliver medicine. He walked in and saw Yi Wentao and the mess on the floor. Jun Jiuqing raised his eyebrows. You're really angry. What's wrong? Are the servants not serving you well enough? Yi Wentao sneered in his heart. Serve? During this period, he had been locked up here like a prisoner. How could anyone serve him? It was more like surveillance. Yi Wentao looked up and asked coldly. What are you doing here today? I've already told you everything that needs to be said the other day. His face was full of annoyance, and he was just short of chasing him away. Jun Jiuqing didn't care and smiled faintly. Nothing. I heard that you had a guest, so I thought I'd come to take a look. Yi Wentao's heart thumped hard. However, he was an old fox after all. He didn't show any guilt on his face. Instead, he laughed sarcastically. What did you say? Guest? I don't have anyone here other than you. Guest, where did you come from? Jun Jiuqing looked around. The air in the room seemed to have frozen. Patriarch, why do you have to do this? After a long while, Jun Jiuqing finally spoke. Thanks to your grace, I was able to become the young lord and ascend to the position of patriarch. If you continue to stay here like this, I guarantee that you will be able to spend the rest of your days in peace. Unfortunately, you don't seem to care about this. Yi Wentao said coldly, I don't know what you're talking about. For the past few days, I've been wondering how you managed to get in touch with that person. Jun Jiuqing suddenly interrupted his words, and there was a strange smile on his devilishly handsome face. Although Family Yi's family business is big, you're dealing with them as an individual. The rest of the family knew nothing about this. Under such circumstances, what did you use to persuade the other party to join hands with you? Yi Wentao's throat went dry as he stared at Jun Jiuqing. What are you trying to say? Jun Jiuqing smiled and shook his head. You should know best what I'm trying to say. For the past few days, I've been thinking about it day and night, and I finally remembered something. He took a step forward. Yi Wentao didn't know why, but his legs suddenly went weak, and he unconsciously took a step back. The two confronted each other. Jun Jiuqing's aura easily crushed Yi Wentao. Yi Wentao secretly regretted it. This retreat was a sign of guilt. Jun Jiuqing continued. I remember that a few years ago, when Rong Xiu went to the Black Demon Cave, that person was at a critical juncture of his cultivation and had almost no combat power. With Rong Xiu's temperament, if he could completely kill the other party, he would definitely not leave the slightest chance of survival. But that time, the Black Demon Cave actually escaped and found another place to go. This meant that although Rong Xiu caused serious damage to the Black Demon Cave that time, he did not really threaten the other party's foundation. With every word Jun Jiuqing said, Yi Wentao felt more pressure in his heart. Seeing that he was silent, Jun Jiuqing asked softly, Don't you think someone helped you? Bang! Yi Wentao took a step back and accidentally knocked over the chair behind him. The high-quality rosewood chair fell to the ground with a dull thud. Master, what's wrong? The elder outside the door heard the sound and quickly knocked on the door to inquire. Jun Jiuqing said lightly, It's nothing. You don't have to come in. Yes. The elder was also a smart person. When he heard this, he immediately responded and obediently continued to guard the door. The room fell into a short period of dead silence. It seems that what I said was true. Jun Jiuqing laughed. Although it was a question, his tone was very certain. I didn't. Yi Wentao opened his mouth and wanted to deny it, but Jun Jiuqing's words made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Don't you find it strange that after so long, no one has come to receive you? Even the news you sent out was not responded to? Yi Wentao suddenly felt a chill in his heart, causing his whole body to turn cold. You. He widened his eyes and looked at Jun Jiuqing in disbelief. Jun Jiuqing knew. I heard that those were the talents that you carefully nurtured for several years and spent a lot of time and effort on. What a pity. Yi Wentao's heart was in a perilous situation. Jun Jiuqing suddenly tilted his head and looked at the void behind Yi Wentao. Then, with a flick of his wrist, a vigorous force transformed into a long whip and suddenly flew out. Smack! The void was forcefully cut open, and the man in black, who had just been hiding, was directly pulled out. His neck was tightly bound by the long whip, and he could not break free. Seeing this, Iwentao's usual calm facade could no longer be maintained. You knew all along. Jun Jiuqing did not say anything and exerted force. Crack. The crisp sound of bones cracking was heard. Finally, the man in black's neck tilted, and he stopped breathing. He was not weak, but Jun Jiuqing struck first, and did not give him any chance to breathe. That was why he died. The man in black lay on the ground, and thick red blood slowly flowed out from under his body. The thick smell of blood quickly spread out. Iwentao's lips trembled, and his face was pale. At this point, what was there to not understand? It's not that I knew all along. Jun Jiuqing looked up and glanced at Iwentao. You can't hide it, so isn't it normal for others to know? Previously, he only had his suspicions and did not have any evidence. However, he knew that Iwentao would definitely not let the matter rest. So during this period of time, he had been sending people to secretly keep an eye on him. Sure enough, he found something. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Besides, Jun Jiuqing was already prepared, and was waiting for him to walk into the trap. Iwentao trembled all over, and there seemed to be a fire burning in his chest, but his body was still cold to the bone. He knew that this time, he was really finished. How do you know so much? About Black Demon Cave, about that person, about everything. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2019. At first, he hadn't noticed, but now he remembered that Jun Jiuqing's words were very strange. Not many people knew that Rong Xiao had gone to the Black Demon Cave. Most people in the entire Divine Ruins world thought that the Black Demon Cave had suddenly chosen to hide from the world and disappeared without a trace. There were very few people who knew what had happened at that time. Not only did Jun Jiuqing know, but he also knew very well. He even knew that the person in the Black Demon Cave was at a critical moment and couldn't make a move. This matter was extremely confidential, and Jun Jiuqing had nothing to do with it. How did he know so much? Iwentao really couldn't figure it out. He looked at Jun Jiuqing with a complicated expression. Only now did he realize that he didn't know much about Jun Jiuqing. This person was extremely dangerous. Jun Jiuqing didn't answer his question. He knew a lot of things, so why should he tell Iwentao, who was already crippled? It seems that I really overestimated you. Jun Jiuqing smiled faintly. After so many years, it's really a miracle that Family E hasn't been implicated by you. Don't worry. Family E is definitely several times better in my hands than in yours. In the future, you should continue to rest here quietly. With that, he turned and left. It seemed that he didn't want to say so much to Iwentao. Obviously, he came this time to deal with the black-clothed man, and also to cut off Iwentao's last path of retreat. Iwentao's eyes were bloodshot. Stop right there. He suddenly let out a roar. Jun Jiuqing stopped in his tracks and looked back. Boom! A cluster of green flames suddenly burst out from Iwentao's body. Jun Jiuqing's pupil shrank. Iwentao was going to self-destruct. He was crazy. Iwentao was indeed crazy. The black-clothed man's death, and Jun Jiuqing's words were the last straw that broke the camel's back. He thought that he still had a chance to turn the tables, but now, everything was in vain. He didn't need to think about it to know what kind of life he would live in the future. Like a prisoner extremely lowly, trapped in this place, never seeing the light of day, until he died. Iwentao's life was proud and honorable. How could he bear such an ending? Since all hope was gone, he might as well die with Jun Jiuqing. Even though Iwentao was crippled now, he was still a top-rate revered god in the past. If he forcibly self-destruct, the consequences. At such a close distance, even if Jun Jiuqing didn't die, he would be crippled. Jun Jiuqing, however, the flames on Iwentao's body were spreading too quickly. He had already made up his mind to die, so he didn't hold back at all as he madly urged the origin power in his body to burn. A terrifying aura was rapidly gathering. Jun Jiuqing knew that something was wrong. He made a prompt decision and turned to run. Bang! He directly forced open the door. Master, what's going on? The elder guarding the door was shocked. He was about to ask when he saw a shadow flash before him. Before he could finish, a scorching and terrifying aura suddenly rushed out of the room. A deep sense of fear welled up in his heart, and he subconsciously looked inside. Yi Wentao had become a burning man. The accumulated power in every inch of his body was burning crazily. After all, he used to be a powerful god. The power in his body was extremely shocking. The elder immediately sensed the danger. Yi Wentao was going to self-destruct. Without a second thought, he immediately retreated. At this moment, he didn't have time to think about what had happened inside to make Yi Wentao make such a choice. There was only one thought in his mind: run. However, before he could run too far, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly came from behind him. A terrifying wave of qi gushed forth like a surging river, engulfing everything. Green flames covered the sky and earth. The elder was hit by this terrifying explosive force. His body flew out and was torn into pieces in midair. Then, he was swallowed by the green flames that were spreading crazily. From life to death, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Although Jun Jiuqing's reaction was extremely fast, and he managed to escape further away, he was still unavoidably affected by this power. His chest shook and he spat out blood. At this moment, his internal organs felt as if they had been crushed by this power and were about to explode. His vision turned black and he fainted. This commotion quickly spread. The entire family finally fell into chaos. Chu Luyue and the others, who were far away in the Divine Ruins world, did not know what happened to the family Yi. However, Mo Shiqian had always been in contact with Yi Wentao. In the midst of the chaotic battle, his expression suddenly froze. He gritted his teeth and said hatefully, "Useless thing." Rongxiu heard this. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and then realized what had happened. His thin lips curled up slightly. It seems that the winner of the family Yi has been decided. You. Mo Shiqian looked up suddenly. You did it. Rongxiu smiled faintly. There can't be two tigers on one mountain. Do you still need me to do such a thing personally? If he didn't do anything, the family Yi would turn the world upside down. After all, Yi Wentao and Jun Jiuqing were not easy to deal with. Judging from Mo Shiqian's reaction, Jun Jiuqing should have won. This was the same result he had expected. Mo Shiqian was furious. What he hated the most was Rongxiu's always calm and collected appearance. It was as if nothing in the world could disturb his mind, and no one could gain the slightest advantage from him. No matter what kind of trouble he encountered, he always seemed to be victorious. What right did he have? Mo Shiqian was unconvinced and indignant. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. After the fight just now, his body was already riddled with injuries and bloodstains. However, Rongxiu was much stronger than him. Although he was also injured and stained with messy blood, most of it was not his own blood. A few years ago, he was at a critical juncture of cultivation, so he could not fight Rongxiu head-on. He thought that after such a long time, he could finally surpass Rongxiu. Who knew? Things did not go as he wished. Yes, he was cultivating, but Rongxiu's strength was also increasing. If this went on, he would be the one to lose in the end. One had to know that Rongxiu had not summoned his divine body yet. Moreover, he also had two divine bodies. On the other hand, the two divine bodies that he had painstakingly cultivated were now entangled by Chu Luyue and Chang Wanzhou. Chang Wanzhou seemed to be the weakest, but his endurance was extremely astonishing. It had been so long, but his speed and movement technique had not weakened at all. Needless to say, Chu Luyue was even more so. Just the flowing clouds flying diagram alone was enough to give him a headache. Not to mention, she had the help of Dumpling, who had already opened the fifth meridian. Moreover, she still had a trump card that she had not revealed. This battle was most likely going to be very dangerous. Mo Shiqian thought quickly and made a decision. This could not go on. Blood Heaven Realm. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2020. Following his roar, a copper mirror suddenly appeared in front of him. This bronze mirror was very similar to the one that Hong'an had taken out before. But it was also different. The edge of this bronze mirror was engraved with mysterious runes. In the mirror, a sea of blood was surging. A fishy, sweet and dense smell of blood suffused out from within, and it was mixed with the smell of decay, causing one to feel nauseous. Chu Liyue's expression froze. She had seen this bronze mirror before. The previous few times, Emo Shirqian had not revealed his true appearance, and this bronze mirror had always appeared. At this moment, the Emo Shirqian in front of her suddenly retreated. On the other side, the divine body that had been fighting with Chang Wanzhou for a long time also retreated without hesitation. The three figures gathered and stood in one place. Then, the two divine bodies transformed into a cloud of black mist again and surged into the Blood Heaven realm. Emo Shirqian stood in front of the Blood Heaven realm with his hands crossed and his eyes closed. Then, a distant and heavy pressure suddenly spread out from the Blood Heaven realm. The void trembled and distorted. Alarm bells rang in Chu Liyue's mind. She didn't even need to think before she shouted, "Dumpling!" Dumpling reacted extremely quickly. Its huge reddish-gold wings flapped and immediately rose into the air. Chang Wanzhou's eyes sharpened as he slashed down the cloud sky copper sword. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere, and several silver-white Tianlei forces surged out. In the blink of an eye, a barrier condensed in front of him. A black flame flashed in Rongxiu's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. His palm moved slightly as if he was about to move, but after a moment of hesitation, he quietly retracted it and only tapped the tip of his foot and retreated. Almost at the same time, boom! A loud sound was heard. In the Blood Heaven realm, a scarlet sea of blood surged violently. As the waves continued to rise and fall, a terrifying power surged out from within. The golden enchantment finally broke apart at this moment. In an instant, countless golden sparks scattered in all directions, almost illuminating half of the sky. "It's out!" When the people who were waiting outside heard this, their spirits were lifted. Countless pairs of eyes looked towards the center. Amidst the flashing lights, the bronze mirror suspended in midair immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone from the Black Demon Cave was overjoyed. Sect leader is indeed powerful. They knew very well that this was the sect leader's trump card. Sure enough, as soon as it was summoned, it tore apart Rongxiu's barrier. Suddenly, a low voice came from the crowd. "Why is there so much blood on Sect Master's body?" The crowd, which was still boiling with excitement, fell silent for a moment. Just now, when the barrier was broken, they were too excited and didn't notice it. When she heard this, she took a closer look and saw that there was more blood on Emo Shirqian's body than the other three. Although his body was still shrouded in a layer of black mist, it had become much thinner after a series of fierce battles. Clearly, he had used up a lot of energy just now. The Blood Heavenly Realm is the Sect Master's trump card. Since he's using it now, he'll definitely win. After a moment, someone said loudly, "This was the Black Demon Cave's territory." There was no reason for these three to be so presumptuous. There was a reason for the previous incident, but this time, the same thing would never happen again. Just as everyone was about to besiege, Emo Shirqian suddenly said, "Everyone from the Black Demon Cave, listen up. Get into formation." No one dared to disobey the order. Chu Liyue's heart sank. Without the protection of Rongxiu's barrier, the three of them were immediately in a dangerous situation. There were so many cultivators from the Black Demon Cave here. If they all attacked together, she was afraid. Thinking of this, she quickly turned her head to take a look. However, what she saw stunned her on the spot. The people from the Black Demon Cave did not go forward to attack. Instead, they spread out. They stood neatly, and all of them did the same action. Their arms were crossed in front of their chests, their fists clenched, and their heads lowered slightly. Chu Liyue frowned. Why did they look more like they were performing some kind of ritual? As soon as this thought flashed through her mind, she saw spots of light appear one after another above everyone's heads. The spots of light were only the size of a fist and were not dazzling. They were faint blood red. It looked like a blood moon. Chu Liyue suddenly remembered the totem of the Black Demon Sword sect. Two swords cupping the moon. Moreover, it was indeed a blood moon. However, for some reason, this scene was inexplicably familiar. "People of the Black Demon Cave, please protect us." Suddenly, Emo Shirqian opened his mouth and said something in a low voice. He stood in front of the Blood Heaven mirror, facing the blood-red mirror. This voice was filled with admiration and expectation, as if he was summoning something. Chu Luyue had never seen such a situation before, and was puzzled for a moment. Mo Shurqian was seeking help? He's waiting for someone. Rong Xiu's figure moved, and he came to her side as he spoke softly. Chu Luyue glanced at him. Waiting for who? Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, and did not answer. Chu Luyue slowly clenched her fists. In fact, the answer was not difficult to guess. At this time, of course Mo Shurqian was waiting for someone who could help them. However, who could it be? Suddenly, a figure slowly emerged from the sea of blood in the blood heaven mirror. Following this, an ancient voice could be heard. What's the matter? This voice seemed to come from a distant time and space, carrying an astonishing pressure. As soon as the voice fell, the surrounding space seemed to tremble. Mo Shurqian bowed and said, I had no choice but to disturb you. I really didn't want to. However, I'm in trouble this time. Please help me. He raised his hand and pointed at Chu Luyue. Please kill the 3 people from Shangguanyu. Between heaven and earth there was silence. Chu Luyue suddenly approached Rong Xiu and whispered, Why do I feel this voice is so familiar? Before she finished speaking, the voice sounded surprised and happy. Little girl you are. Users of mobile phones, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 2021. Chu Luyue was taken aback. This voice. Senior Diwu. She spoke with some uncertainty. The figure in the blood heaven realm gradually lost its blood-red color, revealing its original appearance. His face was kind, and he looked like an immortal. It was Diwu Zhangzi, whom she hadn't seen for a long time. At this moment, those weathered eyes were looking at Chu Luyue with joy and longing. Come and let this old man take a look. Mo Shurqian, who was originally full of confidence, was shocked. The people who were standing in the array were also stunned. What did he say? What did he just shout? It was obvious who he was shouting at. Even a fool could tell. Senior Yu. Mo Shurqian was so shocked that his heart was trembling. He had spent so much effort to invite this person here to deal with Rong Xiu and Chu Luyue. Why did the situation seem to be developing in an uncontrollable direction now? Diwu Zhangzi frowned impatiently and waved his hand. Hey Mo Shurqian, right? Get out of the way first. Don't block my Yuer from coming over. As he spoke, he tilted his head and shouted at Chu Luyue with a smile. Girl, come over. Mo Shurqian's body stiffened, and his mind went blank for a moment. For a moment, he almost suspected that he had heard wrongly. But in the blood heaven realm, Diwu Zhangzi's eager and happy smile at Chu Luyue was enough to explain everything. Chu Luyue hesitated for a moment, but still chose to go forward. With Diwu Zhangzi here, no one dared to act rashly. She walked all the way to the front smoothly, and bowed respectfully and obediently. You are great Senior Diwu. Diwu Zhangzi looked at her and sighed. I haven't seen you for a while. Yuer has really become more and more beautiful. The corner of Chu Luyue's mouth twitched. She slowly raised her hand, and took off the mask on her face. Senior Diwu, you can say this later. She had that ordinary face of hers. Yet he could still praise her like that. Diwu Zhangzi waved his hand. Sai, are you, or has always been the most beautiful girl in the world? Who would dare to question him? His words were filled with arrogance and pride. His words caused many people to look at Chu Luyue. The woman wore an ordinary crimson dress, and her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. The face under the mask was as white as snow, with skin of ice and bones of jade. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, and her eyes were like autumn waters. In particular, the free and easy feeling between her brows added to her elegance. Many people's eyes flashed with surprise. The legendary Shangguanyu, the princess of the Tianling dynasty, was like a legend. She was indeed the most beautiful woman in the world. Chu Luyue laughed, his eyes curved into crescents. Don't tease me. Diwu Zhangzi looked at her and suddenly asked. You've cultivated a divine body. Chu Luyue was still wearing that layer of gorgeous soft armor, which shone with a piercingly cold and noble light under the sunlight. She nodded slightly. I just cultivated it not long ago. Diwu Zhangzi was overjoyed. Your is indeed amazing. He thought it would take some time, but he didn't expect it to be so fast. Sure enough, this girl's talent and opportunities were far beyond ordinary people's. How have you been? Chu Luyue asked. I wanted to go back and take a look, but I couldn't find the time. I didn't expect to meet you here today. Her lips curved slightly, and she said softly, what a coincidence. There was a moment of dead silence. Diwu Zhangzi touched his nose awkwardly. Mo Shiqian's blood had already coagulated, and his limbs were numb. He spent a lot of effort to suppress the surging emotions in his heart. Senior Diwu, you know Shengguanyu? This sentence was simply nonsense. Anyone could tell that not only did they know each other, but they also had a close relationship. Otherwise, how could they call each other so intimately? But at this moment, Mo Shiqian almost couldn't think of this. He realized that the external aid he invited might have become the enemy's helper. Diwu Zhangzi looked at Mo Shiqian. The smile on his face faded, and there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. This was a far cry from the kind and warm attitude he had when facing Chu Luyue just now. That's right. You can be considered half a disciple of mine. What? You invited this old man here today just to kill her? Mo Shiqian was shocked, and his heart sank. Half a disciple. This kind of relationship was indeed incomparable to ordinary people. In his impression, this person had never taken in a disciple before. How could Chu Luyue? Mo Shiqian's heart was in a mess. Inviting a master to kill his disciple? What a joke! Chu Luyue blinked. Half a master. Actually, this was a little exaggerated. When she was in the Red Moon Desert, she spent most of her time with Dabao. And the things she learned there, such as various prescriptions and Xian formations, were basically all learned from Dabao. But at this time, this kind of explanation was obviously more convincing. Diwu Zhangzi secretly glanced at Chu Luyue. Seeing that her eyes were bright, and she had no intention of refuting, he was immediately in a good mood. Taking advantage of Dabao's absence, it was great to be Yuer's master for a period of time. Mo Shiqian opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Master and disciple? It's a long story. Diwu Zhangzi had already looked at Chu Luyue, and said helplessly and guiltily, in the early years, I had some dealings with the sect master of the Black Demon Cave, but that's all in the past. If this girl knew that he had received many offerings from the Black Demon Cave back then, he was afraid. Anyway, I have no direct relationship with them now. The reason why I came today is that there is a trace of my aura in the Blood Heaven realm. This is also left behind from back then. Diwu Zhangzi rubbed his temples in annoyance. In fact, he indeed didn't have any dealings with the Black Demon Cave. It was just that the relationship wasn't completely severed back then, which gave Mo Shiqian a chance. If he had known the situation here would be like this, he wouldn't have come no matter what. He was almost misunderstood by you, or Diwu Zhangzi felt wronged. He had been trapped in the Red Moon Desert for so long. What else could he do? Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Diwu Zhangzi's attitude couldn't be more obvious when he sided with Chu Luyue, even if he was invited by Mo Shiqian. At this time, he was obviously still on Chu Luyue's side. How could they fight? Mo Shiqian clenched his fists, and the waves in his heart couldn't calm down for a long time. He never thought that things would develop like this in the end. Diwu Zhangzi was actually Chu Luyue's backer. Why hadn't he heard of it before? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2022. Diwu Zhangzi was a powerful backer that the Black Demon Cave's ancestral sect leader had latched onto thousands of years ago. For a period of time, Diwu Zhangzi did indeed have a good relationship with the Black Demon Cave. Of course, this good referred to the fact that he felt that the things sent by the Black Demon Cave were good, and to his liking. But in all honesty, ever since he was trapped in the Red Moon Desert, he had never received any benefits from them. Diwu Zhangzi felt wronged, but how could Mo Shiqian not have mixed feelings? This Blood Heaven realm was passed down by the Black Demon Cave's sect leaders. It was a symbol of status, and also a great trump card. From the day he became the sect leader, he knew that the aura of a powerful being was sealed inside. As long as he joined forces with the people of the Black Demon Cave, he could summon him. But such an opportunity only came once. So over the years, the sect leader of the Black Demon Cave cherished this opportunity very much and did not dare to use it easily. Only when the entire Black Demon Cave was in a life-and-death crisis could they use this trump card. If Chu Luyue and Rong Xiao hadn't appeared together today, and Mo Shiqian still didn't have the momentum to win after a long battle, he wouldn't have chosen to invite this person over. Mo Shiqian's idea was very simple. Seize the opportunity to eliminate these people once and for all. This way, it wouldn't be a waste of this one and only great opportunity. But who knew that things would turn out like this? Even if the Black Demon Cave could barely establish a relationship with this person, how could it compare to their master-disciple relationship? Everyone in the Black Demon Cave looked at Mo Shiqian in shock and helplessness. Mo Shiqian clenched his fists, and the flames in his chest seemed to be about to burst. I see, Chu Luyue said with a smile. In that case, there really was a misunderstanding. Senior, you don't know. When I didn't know it was you just now, I really thought I was going to die here today. Bah! What do you mean die? Don't talk nonsense. Although he knew that she was joking, Diwu Zhangze couldn't bear to hear her say such things. After all, he knew that this girl had really died once. And at that time, she didn't even have any memories. She had forgotten all about them. Thinking of that time, Diwu Zhangze's heart ached. Wait a minute. That time? Was it because the Black Demon Cave attacked her? Diwu Zhangze looked at Mo Shiqian slowly. A chill instantly enveloped Mo Shiqian. His heart skipped a beat. Among other things, his intuition was very accurate in this regard. Diwu Zhangze was looking at him like, oh, that's right. Little Yuer, was he the one who attacked you a few years ago? Diwu Zhangze asked slowly. Chu Luyue blinked. You still remember? Speaking of which, it was a long time ago. I remember. At that time, Sect Master Mo seemed to want to snatch something from me. She paused, and the smile on her lips deepened. A few years have passed, but Sect Master Mo is still very persistent about this matter. Not long ago, the family E and the Nan family joined forces and headed to Peach Blossom Dock to surround and intercept us. What nonsense are you talking about? Mo Shiqian shouted, the veins on his forehead bulging. Although Chu Luyue was telling the truth, how could he admit it in front of Diwu Zhangze at this time? Wasn't this purely attracting hatred? Diwu Zhangze was already very unhappy that he invited him over to kill her. If he knew that he had used so many methods previously, Diwu Zhangze would probably want to kill him. How is it nonsense? Chu Luyue looked surprised. Didn't Sect Master Mo help transfer Nan Yi's Yuan Meridian to her brother? It's also because of this that Nan Yifun blamed Nan Yi's death on me, and hates me to the core. And family Yi, why do you think they suddenly had the idea of snatching Peach Blossom Dock? Moreover, they acted together with the Nan family. This is too much of a coincidence. What do you think? Chu Luyue's words were very clear and logical. Even those who didn't know much about these matters could sense that something was amiss when they heard this. Obviously, someone was secretly instigating and sowing discord. And who this person was, it was even more obvious. Mo Shiqian clenched his fists tightly and looked at Chu Luyue, as if he wanted to tear him apart. Family E? Nan family? Little girl. They must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts to dare to make a move on you. A trace of shock flashed across Diwu Zhangze's face, and he instinctively glanced at Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao moved and walked forward with a faint smile. Driven by benefits, those people are naturally capable of doing anything. At this time, he had also removed the disguise on his face. There was a faint smile on his handsome and devilish face. Even if he was dressed in extremely simple and ordinary clothes, it couldn't hide his peerless beauty. When the two of them stood together, the surrounding scenery immediately paled in comparison. Even if they didn't do anything, it would always make people involuntarily look over. His features were picturesque, and his charm was unparalleled. That's the princess's husband? The legendary, holy son of the Yintian Tower? Ziji looked at this scene in a daze, and muttered in a low voice. Although they hadn't been to the Divine Ruins world, rumors about these two people had already spread among many cultivators in the past few months. In fact, this news was first spread by the people of the Black Demon Cave. The main purpose of doing this was to attract those genius cultivators to Cloud State City to participate in their trial. They didn't expect that Chu Luyue and Rong Xiu would actually appear here directly. When they thought of how they had interacted with these two for so long, and even owed them a favor, He Ziji and his sister couldn't help but look at each other and see the shock and disbelief in each other's eyes. No wonder she's so strong, He Xilan subconsciously said in a low voice. To think that they were talking about the princess in front of those two, but they didn't expect that the real princess was right in front of them. Seeing that Diwu Zhangzi was still angry, Chu Liyue smiled and comforted him. However, Senior Diwu, you don't have to worry too much. Those troubles have been resolved. Nan Yifan is already dead. As for Yi Wentao, he's also dead. If I'm not wrong, it should have happened just now. Rong Xiu added. Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at him. Since Rong Xiu said so, it should be close to the truth. It seemed that Yi Wentao's life after returning wasn't easy. He even died in such a short time. Jun Jiuqing still had some tricks up his sleeve. Chu Liyue thought to himself. To be able to ascend to the position of family Yi's head with a different surname was not simple. Now that Yi Wentao was dead, the entire family Yi was in his hands. Hearing this, Diwu Zhangzi finally calmed down a little. These days, any dog dared to touch their Yu. Did they really think that they couldn't support you, or just because they were trapped in the Red Moon Desert? His gaze was cold as he asked word by word. Mo Shirqian, what do you want to steal from you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2023. This question was low, cold, and oppressive. Every word was like a mountain that weighed heavily on Mo Shirqian's heart. What did he want? Of course, it was the thing in Chu Liyue's body. But he couldn't say this out loud. The scene fell into a stalemate and was deathly silent. The air seemed to have solidified. Everyone held their breaths and waited. At this moment, even breathing seemed wrong. It's all a misunderstanding. Finally, Mo Shirqian spoke slowly. Every word seemed to be spat out through gritted teeth. Previously, Shirqian didn't know that Shengguan Yu had such a relationship with you. I hope Senior can forgive me for offending you. He lowered his head and compromised. The people from Black Demon Cave were shocked at first, then they looked dejected and desperate. Even the sect master said so. That made sense. They had spent so much effort to invite foreign aid, but in the end, they were supporting the other party. Then how could this match go on? There was probably nothing more embarrassing than this. Misunderstanding? I don't think so. Diwu Zhangzi interrupted him and sneered. Just now, this old man heard it clearly. You wanted to kill Yu and the others. Although this old man is old, I haven't reached the stage of being blind and deaf. Even if it's really a misunderstanding, can I make a mistake a few years ago and make another mistake now? Mo Shirqian closed his eyes and took a deep breath to suppress the surging emotions in his heart. It's a long story. I can't explain it to you in a short time. I have a lot of time. If you have anything to say, just say it. If I can resolve the misunderstanding between you two, I'll have done a good deed, right? Diwu Zhangzi laughed. But in Mo Shirqian's ears, this laugh was undoubtedly the greatest mockery. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. There was really no way to clean up this situation now. Explain? There was no explanation at all. He was the one who did those things. How could he explain it clearly? Mo Shirqian never thought that Chu Liyue had such a backer. He lowered his head slightly and didn't say a word. Seeing his reaction, what else could Diwu Zhangzi doubt? Mo Shirqian knew. Before she could finish her sentence, Mo Shirqian suddenly moved. He turned his fist into a palm and slammed it toward the blood heaven mirror in front of him. Since the person he invited wasn't a helper, then there was no need for him to be so respectful. The thick black mist instantly shrouded the blood heaven realm. Diwu Zhangzi shouted angrily. Mo Shirqian, how dare you? He wanted to destroy the blood heaven realm. It contained Diwu Zhangzi's aura. If the blood heaven realm was destroyed, Diwu Zhangzi would also be affected. Moreover, without the blood heaven mirror, he couldn't do anything. Since Senior doesn't intend to help, then don't blame us for being impolite. Before he finished his words, Emo Shurtian had already slapped the center of the Blood Heaven realm. Sect leader. When Do Min and the others saw this, they were all shocked and cried out in surprise. They all knew that Blood Heaven realm was closely related to Emo Shurtian. Most of his cultivation relied on this item. If he was injured, he could only recover quickly by relying on the Blood Heaven realm. Once the Blood Heaven realm was destroyed, he would also be greatly affected. But now that things had come to this, he had no other choice. Crack. A crisp cracking sound was heard. A crack quickly spread on the Blood Heaven realm. Puff. Almost at the same time as the Blood Heaven realm shattered, Emo Shurtian's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The aura around his body also instantly became dispirited. But he didn't stop attacking. As long as the Blood Heaven realm was destroyed, the only way for Diwu Zhangzi to come would be cut off. If he didn't come, Emo Shurtian and the entire Black Demon Cave might still have a chance to survive. Sensing Emo Shurtian's thoughts, Diwu Zhangzi snorted coldly, and blood energy filled the air. A terrifying pressure suddenly surged out from it. Emo Shurtian's heart sank. Before he could react, he was blown away by the violent air wave. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu were standing not far away, and were about to be affected. However, just as the power was about to engulf them, a figure suddenly broke out of the Blood Heaven realm. Boom! The Blood Heaven realm completely shattered. However, that figure stood in front of them, and easily blocked the violent energy that was sweeping towards them. Everyone turned to look at that figure. It was Diwu Zhangzi, but at this time his figure was a translucent phantom. And this was the aura he had stored in the Blood Heaven realm. Emo Shurtian looked at the scene in front of him in shock and disbelief. How could this be? When the Blood Heaven realm shattered, your aura should also dissipate. He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone present understood what he meant. Diwu Zhangzi first turned around and carefully looked at Chu Luiyue. I came out in a hurry just now. Did I hurt you? He asked with concern and nervousness. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, I'm fine. Not to mention that with her current strength, she could perfectly avoid the attack. Even if it was too late, there was still Rong Xiu in him. The two of them stood in front of her and protected her tightly. It would be strange if she was still injured. Diwu Zhangzi was relieved after making sure that she wasn't affected. That's good, that's good. On the one hand, he felt sorry for Yuer. On the other hand, if De Bao and Lan Xiao found out that he didn't protect Yuer well, TSK. Diwu Zhangzi didn't know if he could still survive in the Red Moon Desert. He let out a long sigh of relief and looked at Emo Shurtian. Emo Shurtian met those old and cold eyes, and his heart suddenly trembled. You're right. Without the Blood Heaven realm, I can't come over. Diwu Zhangzi stroked his beard. But who told you that my aura would be annihilated if the Blood Heaven realm shattered? Emo Shurtian opened his mouth, but didn't make a sound. He thought so because this was tacitly agreed by the Black Demon Cave sect masters, who knew that after the Blood Heaven realm shattered, not only did the aura not dissipate, but it even appeared. Suddenly, Diwu Zhangzi patted his head. Oh, I remember now. This should be what Emo Yao said back then. Emo Yao was the first sect master of the Black Demon Cave, and the forger of the Blood Heaven realm. He told you that you can summon me with the Blood Heaven realm. And if you destroy it, you can also cut off my way of life, right? Diwu Zhangzi looked at him sympathetically. Silly child, I lied to him back then. Why did you all believe it? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2024. Emo Shurtian felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Even when he knew that Diwu Zhangzi was Chu Luiyue's half-master, he had never been so desperate. Fake. All of this was fake. This was the highest level secret of the Black Demon Cave, which had been passed down for thousands of years. All the previous sect masters had believed in it and kept it strictly, but it turned out that it had been a complete lie from the beginning. Emo Shurtian's blood and chi surged, and his aura showed signs of rebellion. The strong smell of blood between his lips and teeth kept surging, almost suffocating him. His mind buzzed and seemed to be blank. Even everything in front of him seemed to be distorted and became illusory. Diwu Zhangzi's voice kept coming into his ears. To me, the blood heavenly realm is nothing more than a place for this remnant aura to reside. Even if it's gone, I can still stay in another place. However, I remember that this blood heaven realm seems to be very important to you, right? Especially since you're the sect master. If I'm not wrong, more than half of your force will be consumed when the blood heaven realm is broken, right? Diwu Zhangzi shook his head with emotion. So miserable, so miserable. Years of hard work and cultivation were ruined just like that. Those who heard it were sad, and those who heard it shed tears. Mo Shurqian spat out another mouthful of blood. After the blood heaven realm was broken, the black mist that had been lingering around him gradually dissipated. His face was finally revealed in front of everyone. Chu Luiyue looked over, and surprise flashed across her eyes. Mo Shurqian looked very young, only in his 20s. His appearance was delicate, and even a little feminine. His skin was very white, and if one looked carefully, one could even see the faint blue blood vessels under his thin skin. It was as if he had never seen the sun all year round. Anyone who saw him would find it hard to accept that the famous sect master of the Black Demon Cave had such a look. Did he rely on cultivation to maintain this appearance? Chu Luiyue asked in a low voice. It was said that Mo Shurqian had been the sect master for decades. His true age was obviously not the 20-something years old that he appeared to be. Rongxiu nodded. Diwu Zhangzi chuckled. Girl, there's something you don't know. The cultivation method of the Black Demon Cave is different from that of other sects and clans. They devour the essence and force of other cultivators to improve their own strength. It's extremely insidious. Moreover, the younger and more talented, the richer and purer the power they can extract. Mo Shurqian is now at the peak of the god realm. To reach this step, his hands are stained with the blood of countless cultivators. This was also why he had lied to Mo Yao back then. From the very beginning, he knew that this Black Demon Cave was not a good place. But at that time he didn't care. Who would have thought that today, they would actually stretch their hands towards you? This Diwu Zhangzi. Chu Luiyue was shocked when she heard this, but she instantly understood something. No wonder. The Black Demon sect had to. As cultivators, however. After they gathered these people, they did not spend much effort in nurturing them. Instead, they killed them in batches. It turned out, it was all because of this. Below, Iziji and the rest also turned pale when they heard this. He had originally thought that after participating in this trial, he would be able to enter the Divine Ruins world and achieve meteoric success, becoming a top expert. In the end, they were just here to die. If not for Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu, they would have. Everyone was scared. Looking at the surroundings, the mountains were undulating and lush. Who would have guessed that this was a hellish place? Relying on such methods to forcibly improve one's cultivation is against the heavens. It's a grave sin. In the end, it will only backfire on oneself. Diwu Zhangzi stared at Mo Shurqian, his eyes cold. Originally, this old man didn't want to meddle in your affairs after all these years of self-cultivation. But you delivered yourselves to me. Don't blame this old man for being rude. With that, he suddenly raised his hand. An invisible pressure quickly spread out in all directions. Condense. Following his shout, Chu Luiyue suddenly realized that the surrounding space was quickly solidifying. After the blood heaven mirror shattered, it disintegrated into countless fragments and scattered in all directions. Along the way, it carried several violent forces that almost tore the void apart and caused the world to tremble. However, after Diwu Zhangzi shouted, all the movements suddenly stopped. The fluttering leaves suddenly stopped in the air. The collapsed cliffs and rocks no longer rolled down. The air was filled with a faint smell of blood and a trace of icy cold air. A crease suddenly appeared in midair. Chu Luiyue widened his eyes in shock. That was a fold caused by forcibly twisting space. Then a second, a third. This world seemed to be under Diwu Zhangzi's control. With a wave of his wrist, he caused the endless void to twist and fold. He didn't summon the divine realm, but he was the only master here. Break. Diwu Zhangzi spat out a word between his lips. The wrinkles quickly gathered around Mo Shurqian and surrounded him. Then there was a loud bang. Boom. The huge space directly exploded. Mobile users, Please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 2025. There were no tricks, no hesitation. From the beginning to the end, Diwu Zhangze only made one move and said 2 words. And these 2 words easily determined Mo Shurqian's life and death. When the compressed space exploded, Mo Shurqian's figure was instantly swallowed. Chu Liyue's pupils constricted, and she could hardly believe what she was seeing. Actually, this was the first time she had seen Diwu Zhangze make a move with her own eyes. Back in the Red Moon Desert, although she had fought with Diwu Zhangze and the others, their goal at that time was to improve her strength, so they knew how to hold back. She only knew that they were all very powerful, but she didn't know the upper limit of their strength. She had never seen them truly fight to the death with anyone. Furthermore, this was only Diwu Zhangze's aura. Then, how strong was his true strength? Moreover, Diwu Zhangze wasn't the strongest among the 3 of them. Chu Liyue still remembered that Lan Xiao had once said in disdain, "Diwu? He just knows how to play with space. He doesn't have much ability." It was precisely because of this sentence that Chu Liyue had sent Mu Hongyu to the Red Moon Desert and let her cultivate with Diwu Zhangze. Lan Xiao's words were still ringing in her ears. Looking at the scene in front of her, Chu Liyue was speechless. If this was just playing with space and not much ability, then how could the rest of the people in this world live? A miserable cry of agony could be heard coming from within. Even though the space there was chaotic and all kinds of black spatial rifts intertwined, and outsiders couldn't see anything at all, it wasn't difficult to imagine what kind of terrifying torture Mo Shurqian had experienced when they heard this sound. Many people from the Black Demon Cave were frightened out of their wits. Some even wanted to retreat. This person was simply too terrifying. The sect master's strength could be considered the top in the entire Black Demon Cave. Even he couldn't gain any advantage from the other party, let alone them. The world was silent, and Mo Shurqian's voice sounded especially mournful. It was chilling. However, this voice didn't last long. As time passed, the sound gradually weakened until it completely disappeared. Sect master, how is it? Someone asked cautiously and fearfully. No one answered. He didn't need to guess to know that it wouldn't be any better. Hung and looked at the space that was crazily strangling and shuddered. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty and planned to leave quietly. This place was too dangerous, especially when those 3 people were brought in by him. No matter what, he had to escape as soon as possible. However, just as he took a step forward, a strange voice sounded from the front. He was shocked and looked up, only to see a spatial fold surging toward him like a wave. Danger! Hong'an knew that something was wrong. He moved his feet and was about to retreat quickly. But at this moment, how could he still be in control? The space around him suddenly froze, making him unable to move. He could only watch as the fold approached. No. Hong'an's eyes widened in horror. The next moment he felt a chill at his waist. The voice in his throat also stopped abruptly. He slowly looked down, only to see that the lower part of his body was gone. He was swallowed and strangled by the spatial fold. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Only then did the intense pain come flooding in from all directions. Hong'an's eyes rolled back and he fainted. But soon, his upper body was also erased by the spatial fold that kept coming back and forth. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. This scene made everyone more and more silent. It also made those who were ready to make a move extremely frightened, and dispelled those unnecessary thoughts. Diwu Zhangze didn't even look over. He only stroked his beard and said calmly, "Did I say you could leave?" He rarely made a move, but when he did, it had to be perfect. He hated disobedient people the most. "If I tell you to stay here, then stay here. Why are you moving around? You almost destroyed the spatial pattern that I had painstakingly conceived." If everyone knew what he was thinking at this moment, they would probably vomit blood again. It turned out that the lives of these people were not as important as that spatial fold in his eyes. Chu Liyue exhaled softly. Diwu Zhangze was already so powerful. Then what about Lan Xiao? And what about Dabao? Moreover, Dabao seemed to be rather fearful of the Divine Ruins world, and had been unwilling to make a move there. Even now, she was still very puzzled about this matter. Poof! At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Chu Luyue put away her chaotic thoughts and looked up. In the chaotic space that was already distorted beyond recognition, a fist-sized black fog suddenly broke out from it. And within that black fog was an extremely familiar aura. That was Emo Shirqian's soul. Chu Luyue's heart tightened. Diwu Zhangzi had already made a move again. Sacrificing your life to protect your soul. You're smart. However, if you think you can escape like this, you're too naive. As soon as he finished speaking, several spatial folds appeared in the surroundings again, and surrounded that black fog. However, at this moment, a series of explosions sounded one after another. It was the blood moon-like balls of light above the Black Demon Cave people's heads that exploded one after another. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2026. Balls of blood-colored light exploded, instantly tearing the surrounding space apart. These forces seemed to be guided by something and intertwined with each other, forcibly carving out a bloody path. And the black fog that carried Emo Shirqian's soul fled along that path. It was extremely fast. Diwu Zhangzi sneered. Want to run? Not so easy. He waved his hands, and the surrounding space began to squeeze toward the center again. Emo Shirqian's path forward was sealed again. Bang! The black fog crashed forward fiercely, but it could not break through the space barrier in front of it. Diwu Zhangzi had already sealed this place. How could he escape? Even when he was at his peak, he might not be able to do so, let alone now. The Blood Heaven realm was already destroyed, and Emo Shirqian was done for. His current actions were just the desperate struggle of a cornered beast. A transparent cage suddenly appeared in Diwu Zhangzi's palm. The cage was only the size of a palm, and it shone faintly under the sunlight. Chu Luyue focused on it, and his gaze suddenly focused. The glittering dots of light on the surface were actually runes. Exquisite technique, go! Diwu Zhangzi let out a clear shout, and the small transparent cage quickly flew out. It silently drew a straight silver line in the air, and went straight for the black fog. There was no way to avoid it. Just as the black fog was about to be locked up by the transparent cage, an explosion suddenly came from their side. Chu Luyue immediately looked back and frowned. It was a subordinate of the Black Demon Cave. His body suddenly exploded, turning into a cloud of blood mist. He didn't even have the chance to cry out in pain before he lost his life. Then, the cloud of blood mist actually flew toward the black fog. As soon as the two came into contact, they quickly merged. The color of the black fog seemed to have become a little thicker. Furthermore, there seemed to be a faint blood-red color in the middle of it. It was just that this blood color was hidden, and could not be seen clearly. Then, the same thing happened one after another. Bang! 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 Explosions sounded one after another. And in the blink of an eye, the surrounding subordinates of the Black Demon Cave suffered heavy casualties. One had to know that due to the huge commotion from before, almost everyone in the Black Demon Cave was here. No one expected that these people were not injured because of Chu Luyue and Rong Xiu, nor were they killed because of Diwu Zhangzi. They had all died in the hands of Emo Shirqian. Qi. A stream of warm blood splashed onto Do Min's face. He, who was in a state of deep shock and numbness, suddenly woke up. Run, run. His face was pale, and his voice was trembling. Without any hesitation, he used his fastest speed. However, just as he took half a step forward, the origin power in his body suddenly began to frantically gather towards his origin core. And then bang! Before Do Min could even react, he felt an intense pain, and his body completely dissipated. All the power in his body condensed into a bloody mist, and merged with the black mist. At this time, the black fog had become much more solid. Inside, the blood was dense and eerie. Diwu Zhangzi frowned. This Emo Shirqian was more cunning and ruthless than she had imagined. In order to survive, he sacrificed his subordinates without hesitation. In a short while, nearly 1/3 of the people in the Black Demon Cave had died in his hands. In Emo Shirqian's eyes, their lives were just a weight that could increase his chances of escaping. It was not worth mentioning. The power above the black fog became stronger and stronger, and its speed became faster and faster. Diwu Zhangzi had already sealed this space, but he still could not completely control it. The sky fell into chaos. More and more people died, and the smell of blood filled the air. It had almost become an extremely tragic purgatory. The transparent cage followed closely behind, but as Emo Shurqian's soul devoured more and more power, the gap between the two finally began to widen. Diwu Zhangzi's expression hardened. He was about to make a move when he suddenly frowned, and his hand movements stiffened for a moment. Senior Diwu? Rongxiu immediately sensed that something was wrong. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue immediately looked over and realized that Diwu Zhangzi's phantom had become much more transparent than before, and the aura and pressure around him had weakened a lot. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. What happened just now? Although Emo Shurqian was still struggling and trying to escape, it should not have much of an impact on Diwu Zhangzi. He looked as if he had suddenly suffered some kind of attack. It's okay. Diwu Zhangzi shook his head, took a deep breath, and gathered power to attack again. However, this short delay gave Emo Shurqian a chance. In midair, a blood-colored totem suddenly appeared. Then, the black fog rushed over quickly, directly breaking through the surrounding space's seal and pressure, and went straight for the blood-colored totem. Rongxiu sensed that something was wrong, and immediately looked over. His phoenix eyes were stunned, and he directly made a move. Chi! A golden flame flew out, and almost at the moment when the black fog was about to disappear into the blood-colored totem, it violently exploded. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up. At this glance, she only saw that the black fog was fiercely bombarded by Rongxiu's golden flame. The blood inside seemed to surge again, and there were faint cries of pain ringing in his ears. But in the end, the black fog barely squeezed into the blood-colored totem. Then, the blood-colored totem dissipated instantly. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Many people did not even have time to see the totem before it was over. Hateful. He still escaped. A trace of annoyance appeared on Diwu Zhangzi's face. Rongxiu shook his head. Senior, don't worry too much. His soul has been seriously injured by me, and it will take a very long time and a lot of energy to recover. Furthermore, his physical body had already been damaged. It would likely be a long time before he stopped moving. Diwu Zhangzi shook his head and sighed. He knew that Rongxiu was comforting him, but he was still a little unwilling. It was not difficult for him to kill Emo Shurqian. If not for just now. Chu Luiyue stood at the side and watched the scene, frowning even more. In just a short while, Diwu Zhangzi's phantom was even more illusory than before. It was as if a gust of wind could blow it away. Compared to when he first appeared, he was as different as heaven and earth. There was really something wrong with him like this. Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but take a step forward, and there was some worry in her eyes. Senior Diwu, what's wrong with you? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2027. Diwu Zhangzi opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but after some hesitation, he swallowed his words. Let's find a time to talk about this. For now, let's settle the matter of the Black Demon Cave first. Emo Shurqian abandoned the Black Demon Cave and ran away. Before leaving, he took the lives of nearly half of the people in the Black Demon Cave. Although the remaining half were still alive, they were more or less injured by the impact of Diwu Zhangzi and Emo Shurqian's power. Most importantly, Emo Shurqian's actions had completely destroyed their beliefs and ideas. The ground was littered with broken bones, the strong smell of blood, the messy mountain top. Everything reminded them of what had just happened. Their sect master had sacrificed them in order to win a path of survival for himself. Even if they were all loyal and devoted, even if they were all going through fire and water. But it turned out that in Emo Shurqian's eyes, they were just ants, worthless at all. If he had cared about the Black Demon Cave and the people here at all, he would never have done such a thing. Compared to the destruction of the body, the collapse of one's spirit and beliefs was more likely to cause one to fall into despair and collapse. Chu Luiyue looked around. Among the remaining people, a few were venerables, and the rest were basically exalted gods. But at this moment, They all looked equally dejected. Obviously, they no longer had the strength to fight. Di Wuzheng's mind stirred, and the transparent cage suddenly grew in the wind, trapping the remaining people of the Black Demon Cave inside. After Mo Shiqian ran away, the rest of them couldn't run away anymore. Rongxiu, come with me. Di Wuzhengzi knew that the two of them had a lot of questions, so after controlling these people, he proposed to have a private discussion with them. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and looked at Chang Wanzhou. Little Zhou, stay here and watch over them first. Also, I'll leave the people below to you. Chang Wanzhou immediately nodded respectfully. Yes. Although he had always been taciturn and had a cold personality, he was extremely smart and knew how to deal with these things. Although he had been injured before, his recovery ability was very strong, so it was not a big problem. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment, then shouted again. Dumpling. Light flashed before his eyes, and Dumpling reverted from her true form to her human form. She raised her small face. You stay here and help keep watch. After all, Chang Wanzhou was injured. With Dumpling around, it would be an extra layer of protection. In fact, Dumpling had already expected her thoughts. She immediately nodded and responded crisply. Good. Chu Luiyue and the other two soon arrived at the mountain where Mo Shiqian appeared. This was also the center of the entire Black Demon Cave. Usually there was a barrier around the mountain. Except for Mo Shiqian, no one else was allowed to enter. But now that Mo Shiqian had run away, his body was destroyed, and his soul was damaged, the enchantment naturally broke on its own. At the top of the mountain, there was a magnificent palace. It was obvious that it belonged to Mo Shiqian. As soon as they approached, a faint smell of blood spread from it. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Rongxiu flicked his finger, and a golden flame quickly flew out, forming a line of fire around the palace and surrounding it. As the flame burned, a strange sizzling sound kept coming. At the same time, there was also an unpleasant smell. Chu Luiyue frowned even more. Di Wuzhengzi sneered. It seems that Mo Shiqian left a lot of dirty things behind. About 15 minutes later, the flames gradually extinguished. A gentle breeze blew by, and that unbearable smell finally dissipated. Even the smell of blood in the air disappeared. Rongxiu took the lead. The three of them directly entered the palace. Walking into the palace, Chu Luiyue quickly looked around. The ornaments and decorations here were all extremely luxurious. Treasures that couldn't be found outside could be seen everywhere here. It was obvious how extravagant his daily life was. It seems that even after evacuating from the Divine Ruins world, Mo Shiqian's life is still quite comfortable. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and smiled. If they hadn't come here by accident, they didn't know when they would be able to fight Mo Shiqian head-on. He was hiding here really well. The Black Demon Cave has never been short of money. Di Wuzhengzi snorted. Over the years, countless cultivators have been bewitched by them, thinking that as long as they join them, they can soar into the sky and become a top expert in the world. For this, they didn't hesitate to go bankrupt and pay an endless price. But they don't know that this is not a paradise for cultivation, but a purgatory. He knew quite a bit about the Black Demon Cave. Although he hadn't been in contact with them for a long time, it was still the same old thing today. After so many years, the inheritance of the Black Demon Cave had never been broken. Chu Luiyue nodded in agreement. Disregarding everything else, weren't the dozens of cultivators outside here for this very reason? Although there aren't many people in the Black Demon Cave, they don't seem weak. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and said strangely, even if they are carefully selected geniuses, it's still a little beyond common sense. Even a first-rate aristocratic family like Yin Tianke only had a handful of venerate gods in its ranks. However, venerable gods seem to be very common in the Black Demon Cave. However, the strength of these people seems to be slightly weaker than ordinary cultivators of the same level. Chu Luiyue thought of the scene when he fought with those people. Hungin was fine, but although Do Min was in the venerable god realm, the strength he displayed was barely satisfactory. Not to mention a top existence like Yi Wentao, he couldn't even compare to ordinary venerable gods. You're right, compared to real cultivators, they are indeed a lot worse. Rongxiu said. Chu Luiyue asked curiously. Real cultivators? This meant, was he referring to those people in the Black Demon Cave? Rongxiu raised his chin. There was a huge wall in front of them. We'll know what's going on when we go in. There was a door on both sides of the wall. The door was unlocked and opened with a push. But thinking about it carefully, it wasn't difficult to understand. Most of the time, only Mo Shurqian was here. He didn't need to worry that someone would come here. After breaking through the door, creak, the door opened, and Rongxiu walked in first. Diwu Zhangzi and Chu Luiyue followed closely behind. When he saw the scene in front of him, Chu Luiyue was stunned. The space behind the wall was extremely empty, without any extra objects. Except for a sand table in the middle. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2028. On the sand table, the mountain range was lush and undulating. With just one look, Chu Luiyue immediately recognized that this was the sand table in Black Fiend Cave's territory. She walked closer and saw that there were blood spots on the small mountain peaks, flickering with a faint glow. Chu Luiyue focused her gaze and took a closer look. Only then did she realize that the blood spots actually contained a faint suppression. Suddenly, she turned her gaze and found that a mountain peak beside her had collapsed. This was the mountain that Hong'an had brought them to in the beginning. The mountain outside had collapsed, so the model on the sand table had also changed. Chu Luiyue suddenly realized something and sucked in a cold breath. This sand table is connected to the outside world. Rongxiu finished her sentence. His tone was not surprised, and his expression was indifferent, as if he had already expected this. Mo Shurqian can control everything outside through the sand table. And what happens outside will be quickly reflected on this sand table, so that Mo Shurqian can quickly know. This was why even if he did not come out, and did not listen to any reports from the servants, he still knew what was happening outside. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding, and looked at the sand table carefully, but the waves in her heart did not calm down for a long time. Mo Shurqian was really a very capable person. Cough, cough, cough. Diwu Zhangzi suddenly coughed. Chu Luiyue came back to her senses and hurried forward. Senior Diwu, how are you? She had felt that his condition was a little strange just now, but now his aura seemed to be weaker. Diwu Zhangzi waved his hand. I'm fine, I'm fine. This aura has been trapped for many years. Now that it's out, it's inevitable that I'm not used to it. I'll be fine after resting for a while. How could Chu Luiyue not be worried? She didn't believe a single word of the reason he gave her. After pondering for a moment, Chu Luiyue asked, did something happen in the Red Moon Desert? Diwu Zhangzi paused and subconsciously wanted to deny it. What? Before he finished speaking, he looked up and met a pair of dark and bright eyes. Those eyes were as bright as stars, as if they had seen through everything. Diwu Zhangzi could not say the rest of his words. After hesitating for a moment, he sighed deeply. Recently, there has been some trouble in the Red Moon Desert. In the past, the old man's aura was sealed in the Blood Heaven realm, and had no connection with the soul under the Red Moon Desert, so it was not affected. But now that he has broken out of the Blood Heaven realm, he will inevitably be implicated. Implicated? Chu Luiyue inexplicably felt. Diwu Zhangzi seemed to be weighing his words. Although the old man isn't weak, he doesn't have a divine body. So many things aren't very convenient for him. Chu Luiyue's heart fell. Otherwise, with the strength of Diwu Zhangzi and the other two, how could they have been injured? Moreover, during this period of time, there had been no news from Dabeo. Diwu Zhangzi comforted her. Girl, don't worry. It's just a small injury. It's not a big deal. Chu Luiyue stared straight at him. Diwu Zhangzi suddenly could not say the rest of his words. After a long while, he finally shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. Girl, you're too smart. Nothing could be hidden from her. Chu Luiyue said. I'll go back with you and help you and Senior Lan Xiao refine the divine body. She was the one who helped refine Dabeo's divine body. Now that she was much stronger than before, she should be more confident. She originally planned to go to the Red Moon Desert after the matter in the Peach Blossom Dock was over. Now is the time. Diwu Zhangzi shook his head. Girl, you can't go now. Can't. Why? Chu Liyue was puzzled. She had been to the Red Moon Desert many times, and it was just outside the Divine Ruins world. She could reach there quickly without crossing the Gate Realm. Diwu Zhangzi paused for a moment. Lan Xiao and I are not as strong as Debao. Therefore, even with your help, we still won't be able to refine our divine bodies in our current state. Even if you go, it'll be in vain. Moreover, the Red Moon Desert is in a dangerous period now. Any powerhouse below the level of a venerable god will die without a trace. If you go. Chu Liyue was stunned, then she lowered her head slightly. She knew about the dangerous period of the Red Moon Desert. Every 100 years, the Red Moon Desert would be shrouded by the blood moon for a month. Generally speaking, when the blood moon appeared, Debao and the other two could come out from underground and wander around freely. But the dangerous period was different. During that month, the entire desert was dark and blood-red, and the energy of heaven and earth was violent. It was extremely dangerous. That was why it was called the dangerous period. I know that your strength has increased greatly, and you can even fight against a venerable god powerhouse. But you're not a real venerable god after all. As long as you haven't broken through that threshold, you can't enter the Red Moon Desert during the dangerous period. Diwu Zhangzi sighed. During this month, the three of us can't even take care of ourselves, let alone take care of you. If those two guys know that I brought you back, it'll really cause a ruckus. In the end, it was because they were worried about her. Chu Liyue's thoughts turned. Dangerous period. No wonder there was no news from Debao for so long. He was really delayed. But, Senior Diwu, I remember Senior Lan Xiao mentioned before that the last dangerous period of the Red Moon Desert was less than 100 years ago, right? Chu Liyue asked uncertainly. She had heard Lan Xiao mention the dangerous period a few years ago in the Red Moon Desert. Hearing what he said, it didn't seem to have happened that long ago. If it had been 100 years, he wouldn't have said it in that tone. But she didn't ask for the exact time, so she could only guess. Diwu Zhangzi was stunned. Then he cursed in his heart. Lan Xiao can't keep his mouth shut. Isn't it enough for him to be obsessed with my beauty every day? Why is he still so talkative? And he's talking about such important things. Can I let you know about this? You're right. It's indeed less than 100 years since the last dangerous period. But the energy of heaven and earth in the Red Moon Desert has always been unstable. The so-called 100 years is actually just a rough estimate and not accurate. This time, it might also be related to Debao's recondensing of the divine body. Diwu Zhangzi explained. Disregarding everything else, the last sentence was true. Chu Liyue thought about it, and this explanation seemed to make sense. Then, you should stay in Peach Blossom Cove during this period of time. It won't be too late for you to go after the dangerous period. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2029. Seeing Diwu Zhangzi's insistence, Chu Liyue had no choice but to agree. Then, I'll wait for your news. Diwu Zhangzi secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Yes. During this period of time, you can prepare the things first. The old man is fine, but Lan Xiao is a little troublesome. You know that he's always very picky about his face. If he wants to condense a divine body, he'll need a lot of things. Then, he mentioned some of the herbs and other things that he needed. Chu Liyue's eyebrows relaxed. Don't worry, Peach Blossom Doc has all these things. Diwu Zhangzi nodded in relief. Then it's settled. Chu Liyue naturally agreed. But there was still one more tricky thing. Then your aura. Even if he was a top powerhouse, such an aura still needed to be attached to something to be completely preserved. Since the Blood Heaven realm was gone, he had to find the next one as soon as possible. Diwu Zhangzi waved his hand indifferently. It doesn't matter, as long as it's a venerable artifact. He knew that with Chu Liyue and Rongxiu's wealth, they could still afford a venerable artifact. But that wasn't what Chu Liyue was worried about. She hesitated for a moment but still spoke. Senior Diwu, I have a lot of venerable artifacts here. But, even if you can hide them, how will you return to the Red Moon Desert? The expression on Diwu Zhang's face instantly froze. Obviously, he had also neglected this problem. He frowned as he felt a headache coming on. I'll escort you back. Rong Xiu's deep and pleasant voice sounded. Chu Luyue and Diwu Zhangzi looked at him at the same time. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. There shouldn't be a more suitable candidate than me. Senior Diwu, what do you think? Chu Luyue immediately understood. That's right. Rong Xiu was now a venerable god powerhouse. Of course, he could go to the Red Moon Desert. Diwu Zhangzi nodded immediately. Yes. You can go together. Chu Luyue's anxious heart also relaxed. With Rong Xiu accompanying him, there shouldn't be any problems. If she wanted to go to the Red Moon Desert, she would have to either wait for the dangerous months to pass, or break through to the god realm. In comparison, the former was easier to achieve. She had just condensed a divine body not long ago, and now she wanted to cross the threshold of the god realm. It was a bit exaggerated. As if seeing that she was still a little uneasy, Diwu Zhangzi comforted her. Little Yuer, you don't have to be too worried. With your talent, it won't be long before you become a god. He spoke with absolute certainty and sincerity. It was as if he could already see that day. Chu Luyue couldn't help but smile. You really think highly of me. All along, De Bao and the others have been especially fond of her. At the same time, their expectations were also extremely high. In the eyes of others, there were many things that were impossible to do, but they seemed to think that she could do it. Of course, she did it all. Although she had suffered a lot in the process, now that she thought about it, she had indeed benefited a lot. She tilted her head and looked thoughtfully at Rong Xiu. Speaking of which, Rong Xiu's cultivation seemed to be very smooth. A few years ago, he had already broken through to the god realm, and had 2 divine bodies. Not long ago, he directly broke through to the god realm in the god-slaying mound. The gap that was as difficult as climbing the sky for thousands of cultivators was easily crossed by him. Chu Luyue had never seen Rong Xiu worry about cultivation. It seemed that he could break through as long as he wanted to. As soon as this thought flashed through her mind, Chu Luyue couldn't help but laugh. Rong Xiu asked with great interest. What are you laughing at? Chu Luyue's eyes lit up. I'm thinking, now everyone says that I'm so talented that I can fight a god in the god realm. However, what they don't know is that compared to me, your talent is likely stronger, not weaker. She suddenly leaned closer, and asked with a teasing smile. Your Highness, why do I feel that cultivation isn't that challenging for you at all? If I didn't know that you were dreaming, I would have thought that you could break through at will as long as you want. Diwu Zhangzi looked up at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu's smile deepened as he gently caressed her head. What are you talking about? Chu Luyue was originally just joking, so she shrugged her shoulders and smiled. Rong Xiu's eyes flashed, and looked at the sand table again. I wonder where Emo Shurqian escaped to this time. Chu Luyue's heart sank when she heard this. Emo Shurqian's physical body had been destroyed, and only a soul was left. This was even more difficult to find. The world inside and outside the divine ruins was vast. Who knew what he would do next? She followed Rong Xiu's gaze and suddenly narrowed her eyes. She walked closer, and saw that the originally flickering blood-red light on the destroyed mountain peak had already dimmed. There were some other spots next to it that were the same. The light was dim, and there was no vitality. Emo Shurqian's cultivation should also be based on this sand table. Diwu Zhangzi also walked over and said in a deep voice. To be precise, the entire Black Demon Cave is like this. Chu Luyue recalled everything that had happened before and fell into deep thought. They set up Xian formations everywhere, and used various methods to lure those cultivators in. Finally, they devoured their power to increase their own cultivation? Diwu Zhangzi nodded solemnly. That's right. Almost all of their power comes from this. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2030. Using this method to forcibly plunder the power of others could greatly increase the speed of cultivation and allow one to complete the breakthrough of various levels in an extremely short period of time. Compared to ordinary cultivation methods, this method was definitely a shortcut. This was also the usual method of the Black Demon Cave. Diwu Zhangzi shook his head. Back then, only Mo Yao and a few others used this method. I didn't expect their entire sect to have fallen into the mire of greed. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. This also explained her previous doubts. Using this method to cultivate, the experts of the Black Demon Cave emerged extremely quickly. But because they did not cultivate with their own true abilities, the power they obtained was mixed and modeled, and their combat strength was extremely weak. How could there be a shortcut on the path of cultivation? In order to expand their forces, the Black Demon Cave made everyone use this method to cultivate. Although it could greatly expand the sect in a short period of time, it was not a solution in the long run. For example, while there were many gods present today, only a few of them were actually capable of fighting. Once they encountered a powerful one, they would immediately be defeated. It was just a shell. What do you plan to do with those people outside? Diwu Zhangzi asked. Mo Shiqian killed a group when he left, but there were still hundreds of people outside. Chu Liyue looked at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled slightly. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. After Chu Liyue and the others entered the hall, everyone gathered together. Above the almost razed ruins, a red gold flame burned brightly, like a wall, dividing the crowd into two parts. On one side was He Ziji and the others who came to participate in the trial, and on the other side were the remnants of the Black Demon Cave. At this time, they were all trapped in a transparent cage. Dumpling and Chang Wanzhou were in charge of guarding. Chang Wanzhou stood with his sword in his arms. His body was stained with a lot of blood, and he looked quite wretched. However, he stood straight as if he would never bend, and would not be defeated by any force. His delicate and beautiful face was indifferent and cold, without any expression. It was already evening. The afterglow of the sun shone on his body, and his soft golden short hair fluttered in the wind like a painting. Suddenly, Chang Wanzhou felt a small hand pulling at his clothes. Xiaozhou, Xiaozhou? He lowered his head. Dumpling was looking up at him curiously. What's up? Chang Wanzhou didn't want to say anything, but he remembered that Dumpling was Chu Liyue's contracted magical beast, so he opened his mouth. His voice was as cold as ever. However, it wasn't the first day that Dumpling knew him, so she didn't mind. She grinned. Her grape-like eyes seemed to be glowing, dazzling and bright. Little Zhou, tell me, how did you recover so quickly? If she didn't sense it wrongly, Chang Wanzhou's injuries were already mostly healed. It was also because of this that Dumpling made up her mind to come over and ask for clarification. That's all you want to ask? Chang Wanzhou was a little surprised. Dumpling nodded quickly. She was really curious. One had to know that Chang Wanzhou had been seriously injured when he fought with Mo Shiqian. His external and internal injuries were quite serious. But it had only been 2 hours, and he was almost healed. Dumpling was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, and she had the purest bloodline. Her body was extremely resistant to beatings, and her recovery ability was unparalleled. There were very few people in the world who could compare to her. However, Chang Wanzhou was one of them. That was why she was particularly curious. Chang Wanzhou had always looked thin and weak on the surface. How could he? It's been like this since I became a great deity. Chang Wanzhou was silent for a moment before answering. Dumpling was stunned. That's it. That's it. Chang Wanzhou's answer was very boring, and it seemed that he had no intention of continuing to explain. Dumpling tugged at his clothes again, and still refused to give up. Then is it because your divine body is very powerful? I haven't condensed a divine body yet. Chang Wanzhou spoke, directly blocking Dumpling's remaining words. She smacked her lips and scratched her head. No divine body? Then that shouldn't be. Chang Wanzhou wasn't a divine beast. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to recover so quickly. Moreover, his great deity strength seemed to be very strong. Dumpling raised her head again and stared at him for a long time, puzzled. Chang Wanzhou's expression was indifferent, and he didn't say anything else. He really had nothing to say, because what he said just now was the truth. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't notice the problem with his body. It was just that he had been thinking about Chu Liyue before, so he didn't think too much about it. At this time, Tuan Zi's words reminded him. But he didn't have an answer. "Oh," Dumpling suddenly exclaimed in a low voice. "My hand is frozen." Chang Wanzhou lowered his head and saw that there was a thin layer of ice on her little hand. He frowned. Dumpling also raised her head and looked at him with a shocked expression. Just now, she only tugged at his clothes, and there was no ice on his body. How a reddish-gold flame quickly burned, and the thin layer of ice quickly melted. This bit of cold air didn't pose a threat to Dumpling, but the reddish-gold heavenly phoenix was an existence of the purest yang. Ordinary cold air couldn't cause her body to freeze. Dumpling suddenly thought of something and widened her eyes slightly. "The cold in your body." Before she could finish, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. It was Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao who had returned. Seeing Dumpling and Chang Wanzhou's expressions, Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. "What's wrong? What are you talking about?" Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2031. Chang Wanzhou said, "It's nothing." Dumpling pouted and swallowed the rest of her words. She was smart and could tell that Chang Wanzhou didn't want to talk about it, so she didn't want to continue asking. Anyway, there would be time and opportunities to find out in the future. "Ayu." Dumpling happily threw herself at Chu Luiyue. She was still young, and she still had some childishness. Other than Chu Luiyue, her heart could not contain anything else. Now that she saw Chu Luiyue, she immediately forgot about other things and people. Chu Luiyue lowered his head and smiled as he patted Dumpling's head. "Ayu, when are we going to the Red Moon Desert?" Dumpling asked curiously. The matter here had come to an end. They should be leaving soon? Chu Luiyue shook his head. "Let's go back to Peach Blossom Dock first. We'll go after a while." Oh. Dumpling was a little surprised, but she didn't think much of it. No matter where they went, it didn't make any difference to her. Anyway, she just needed to follow Ayu. Chu Luiyue pinched her chubby little face, then looked up at Chang Wanzhou. "Master." Chang Wanzhou bowed. Chu Luiyue looked at him steadily, and a hint of as expected flashed in his eyes. Previously, she found that Chang Wanzhou's recovery ability was amazing. It hadn't been long, but his aura was basically back to normal. She suppressed this thought and turned her gaze to look at the people trapped in the transparent cage. And those people were looking at her at this time. Fear, despair, uneasiness. Everyone had different expressions, but they were obviously in awe and fear of Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao, who had appeared again. After what happened before, everyone now understood that these two people were the most dangerous people in the world to provoke. Not only was his strength extraordinary, but his background was also extraordinary. Then he thought about the things that had spread throughout the Divine Ruins world. How could they not feel uneasy? Some people were looking behind the two of them, but they didn't see Diwu Zhangzi. After all, the exquisite technique was left behind by him. If he didn't show up, then they— "Sorry to trouble you, Senior," Chu Luiyue said softly. Diwu Zhangzi's voice was heard instantly. "It's just a small matter. What's so troublesome about it?" Just as he finished speaking, the transparent cage suddenly began to tighten. The lines seemed to be under the control of some kind of power, quickly twisting and changing shape. No! Some people realized that something was wrong, and fear flashed across their faces. Even if they were extremely disappointed in the Black Demon Cave and Emo Shirqian, it would be a lie to say that they had no intention of surviving. In the face of life and death, not many people could remain calm. However, before he could finish shouting, he stopped abruptly. That person's figure completely disappeared into the intertwined transparent lines. More than one person had such an encounter. In the exquisite technique, everyone who was still alive was trapped in the Black Demon Cave. At this time, under Diwu Zhangzi's control, they were all killed by the exquisite technique. They didn't have the strength to fight back at all. Most people didn't even have the chance to make a sound before their souls were destroyed. On the ground, the color of blood spread out, and then quickly disappeared. The transparent cage became smaller and smaller, and finally, after a quarter of an hour, it returned to the size of a palm. There was complete silence. Hiziji and the others were only separated by a wall of fire. Everyone watched this scene in silence. In fact, most people were already numb. Previously, when Emo Shurchian was escaping, he used the lives of countless subordinates to build momentum for himself. His methods were ruthless, and the scene was tragic. In comparison, dying silently in the exquisite technique was much better. After seeing a hellish scene, it was much easier for him to accept other things. Only the thick smell of blood in the air showed what had just happened here. Swoosh! Rong Xiu raised his wrist slightly, and the exquisite technique flew into his sleeve. Now, Diwu Zhangzi had attached himself to a venerable artifact again. At this time, that thing was on Rong Xiu. Hence, when Diwu Zhangzi summoned the Linglong technique back, it was naturally through Rong Xiu. Many people subconsciously looked in the direction of the exquisite technique, but as soon as their eyes landed on the figure in white, they hurriedly looked away. They didn't even dare to look at his face. This man was noble and unparalleled, looking down on the world. Even if he was just standing there casually, he still exuded pride and nobility from his bones. This small space was created by the Black Demon Cave using extraordinary means. Now that the Blood Heaven realm is broken, Emo Shurchian fled, and the people of the Black Demon Cave were annihilated, there is no longer any support here, and will soon collapse. You should leave as soon as possible, Chu Luiyue said. Just now in the hall, Rong Xiu and she had worked together to completely destroy the sand table. This place would soon become a ruin, or even cease to exist. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't expect this outcome, but when they heard it, they couldn't help but feel a little complicated. After all, they had all come with great ambitions at the beginning. They thought that after passing the trial, they would be able to enter the Divine Ruins world and get a better chance to cultivate. Who knew that it would end like this? Chu Luiyue raised her chin. The barrier over there is already very weak. You can all leave directly. With that, she looked at Rong Xiu. They also had to part ways and leave. Be careful, Chu Luiyue said. Rong Xiu nodded, his eyes deep. I'll be back soon. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. In fact, with Rong Xiu's speed, it wouldn't take too long to get to the Red Moon Desert from here. Moreover, his strength was extraordinary, so there was nothing to worry about. Okay, then I'll wait for you at the Peach Blossom Cove. Rong Xiu's eyes flashed. Anyway, there's nothing urgent over there. I'll send you her off first. Although he knew that Chu Luiyue wasn't weak now, he still couldn't rest assured. Only by sending her back personally could he feel at ease. Chu Luiyue understood what he was thinking, so she didn't reject him. She thought for a while and said, Okay, we'll go back through the Gate Realm over there. She was naturally referring to the Dao Gate Realm behind the Black Demon Cave Mountains. When they came, the power in the Gate Realm went berserk, causing the void to tremble, and finally sent them out of Cloud State City. If they went back now, it would be impossible to find the way back. The best way was to go back through this Gate Realm first. Rong Xiu nodded. After the two discussed everything, they didn't hesitate anymore and directly set off. However, just as they turned around and didn't have time to take a step, they suddenly heard someone shout behind them. Both of you, please wait. Chu Luiyue stopped in her tracks and looked back. The one who spoke was Hiziji. Is there anything else? Hiziji took a deep breath, as if he was still a little nervous, and then directly knelt down. Hiziji and my sister's lives were saved by Your Highness the Holy Sun, and Your Highness the Princess. If you don't mind, in the future, Hiziji is willing to follow the two of you and serve you faithfully. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 2032. You. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. Before he could speak, Hezilan also knelt down. Brother, what you said is also what I think. The two of them knelt down firmly. Their expressions were sincere, and their words were sincere. Chu Luiyue could see that the two of them really thought so. But, it's just a small matter. Moreover, this time we did those things for ourselves. We didn't mean to save you. You don't have to take it to heart. Chu Luiyue smiled and waved his hand carelessly. Hiziji and his sister were resolute. Perhaps to the princess it's just a small matter. But it's true that you saved our lives. We should repay the kindness of saving our lives. He took a deep breath and revealed a trace of embarrassment on his face. Speaking of which, our strength is low, and we indeed don't have the qualifications to be by your side. But this feeling of gratitude was absolutely genuine. If you need us in the future, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. As he spoke, he bent down, bowed solemnly, and kowtowed. Xylan was originally quite eloquent, but at this time, she didn't know how to say anything. After hesitating for a long time, she could only kowtow with Hiziji. At first, they didn't feel it, but after thinking about it, they had encountered a lot of trouble on the way. If it wasn't for Chu Luiyue and the others, they would have died many times over. It was only right for him to thank her. However, they did have self-awareness. Look at Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu. What kind of people were by their side? Not to mention the other backers. Just the strength of a follower like Chang Wanzhou was already at the level of a high god. People like them really didn't have the qualifications to be by their side. The reason why they said this was not for anything else, but purely to express their gratitude and longing. Their seriousness made Chu Luiyue not know whether to laugh or cry. At first, they were willing to travel with Hiziji, and the others purely to be able to sneak in and see what the so-called trial was all about. As for the actions that followed, actually, he didn't do it on purpose. It was just that if he wanted to take care of the Black Demon Cave, he couldn't avoid doing those things. These are all small matters. You don't have to care too much about them. Go back to your own places. Before Chu Luiyue could finish his words, everyone in front of him suddenly fell to their knees. Brother, he is right. Actually, it's not just you two siblings. Even we are only able to survive because of the kindness of the Holy Sun and the Empress concubine. If you're talking about repayment, we naturally can't do nothing. That's right. From now on, if you have any orders, we will obey them. We are weak and cannot be compared to Lord Chang. Only our hot-bloodedness and our lives can make up for it. I hope the Saint Sun and Empress concubine won't mind. Everyone spoke one after another. Every word was from the bottom of their hearts. For a moment, the crowd was agitated. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, then looked at Rong Xiu. She really didn't expect that they would have such a reaction. As she listened to their words, her originally calm heart seemed to be stirred up by waves of emotions. She never thought of herself as a good person. Even if she occasionally saved people, it was under extremely special circumstances. She rarely took these things to heart. But at this moment her heart was stirred. Pairs of sincere and eager eyes looked at her just like that. They were sincerely grateful. Let them follow you back to the Peach Blossom Cove, Rong Xiu suddenly said. What? Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. When Hiziji and the others heard this, they were all shocked and subconsciously quieted down. Rong Xiu's lips curled into a faint smile. The Peach Blossom Cove has 2 gates that can connect the inside and outside of the Divine Ruins world. Not only can it accept experts from the outside world, but it can also defend against dangers from everywhere. All of the people present were quite talented in cultivation. If they could be brought to the Peach Blossom Cove and cultivate there, many of them would definitely be able to increase their strength by another level. Moreover, these dozens of people were loyal to Chu Luiyue and were trustworthy. Bringing them back might not be a bad thing. This was the most suitable choice at the moment. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. Rong Xiu's words made sense. Then it's settled? She made up her mind and looked at everyone. All right. Then all of you will follow me back to the Peach Blossom Cove. The group of people arrived in front of the gate realm. Looking at the light screen that fell from the sky, everyone's faces were filled with undisguised excitement and agitation. After all, this was the purpose of their trip. After this gate realm was the Divine Ruins world, which cultivator in the world didn't want to enter and become an expert. Let's stop here for now. Chu Luiyue looked at Rong Xiu and said softly. Rong Xiu nodded and glanced at the gate realm. There are no totems above this gate realm, so it should be an ownerless land. The Black Demon Cave must have gone through careful screening to choose this place. In order to keep it a secret, they didn't even engrave the Black Demon Cave's totems on this gate realm. Rumble. There was a loud sound. Everyone looked back, and saw that the undulating mountain range suddenly began to collapse. The mountain rocks rolled down and turned into dust. The wind blew, and everything was white. In the distance, the silver barrier also began to shake violently. "Looks like this place is going to collapse completely," Chu Luiyue said softly. She then took a deep breath in and looked at Rongxiu fixedly. "Then we'll leave first. You be careful on your way. If you see Debao and the others, say hello for me." With that, she turned around and stepped into the gate realm. This gate realm was the same as the other gate realms. There were no accidents like the Peach Blossom Cove's gate realm. After Chu Luiyue entered, the others also entered one after another. After a while, their figures all disappeared into the gate realm. It was only then that Rongxiu retracted his gaze. He glanced sideways at the collapsing space. "Senior Diwu, I'll send you back." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure quickly disappeared from where he stood. Rongxiu quickly left Cloud State City. After the Black Demon Cave's destruction, this place had become a dead city. After Rongxiu walked out of the city gate, he paused for a moment and chose a direction. Diwu Zhangzi knew how to get to the Red Moon Desert, so he didn't have to worry about it. Rongxiu was extremely fast. After about a day, he arrived at the Great Desolate Swamp again. As soon as he stepped out of the void, Rongxiu already felt that something was wrong. His eyebrows twitched slightly. He stood still and looked ahead. This was the intersection of the three realms of the Great Desolate Swamp. Mirror Lake and the Mystic Forest were calm at this time. Only the Red Moon Desert was dark, and a blood moon hung high in the sky. The crimson light shrouded everything. Diwu Zhangzi's voice came in a low voice. "Rongxiu, you don't have to go in. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network." Chapter 2033. Rongxiu took out a black ruler. The black ruler flashed, and an illusory figure appeared in front of Rongxiu. Compared to before, his figure was much more transparent, and his aura had weakened a lot. It was as if a gust of wind could blow him away. He looked ahead with a heavy expression, his brows knitted. "Senior Diwu." Rongxiu cupped his fists and bowed. "This trip is dangerous. Let me send you off." Diwu Zhangzi shook his head. "No need. You've already sent me here, so there's no need to take any more risks. At this distance, I can already find my way back. Besides, it's just an aura. Even if I can't go back, there's no loss. After being sealed in the Blood Heaven realm thousands of years ago, I never thought of coming out again." Rongxiu's thin lips curled up slightly, and he smiled faintly. "You're seriously injured. It'll be good if you can recover with an aura." One had to know that without a physical body, their strength was almost constantly consumed. They could only barely maintain it in the Red Moon Desert. But this time, with the arrival of the dangerous months, the three of them probably wouldn't be in a good situation. Diwu Zhangzi still shook his head and looked at him steadily. "Protect you." A fine light flashed in Rongxiu's deep phoenix eyes. "This is Rongxiu's duty." Diwu Zhangzi was relieved, and his expression eased a little. Although the Black Demon Cave has been destroyed, Emo Shurqian is not easy to deal with. Rongxiu knows. "Let's go back." Diwu Zhangzi waved his hand, then directly lifted his leg and walked forward. His figure quickly disappeared in the crimson color. Rongxiu was silent for a moment. The heat wave wrapped in coarse sand came with the wind. He raised his eyebrows slightly and turned to leave. On the other side, Chu Luiyue let everyone through the gate and officially entered the Divine Ruins realm. As soon as they stepped in, abundant energy of heaven and earth rushed over. Everyone was amazed. The Divine Ruins realm is indeed worthy of its reputation. Yes, if I can cultivate in a place like this, it won't take long for me to break through to the high deity realm. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to Princess. Chu Luiyue smiled. These people were indeed very talented, but they were limited by their previous cultivation environment, which was why they were unable to break through to the high god level. Now that he was in the Divine Ruins world, as long as he cultivated well, breaking through would happen sooner or later. She fixed her gaze in front of her, taking in the scene in front of her. In front of him was a continuous mountain range. Towering mountains and precipitous ridges stood tall and straight. At a glance, there were towering trees everywhere, lush and verdant. It seemed to be a deserted place. I wonder where this place is? Someone asked. Chu Liuyue's eyes flickered, and he suddenly raised his hand. A scarlet gold flame flew out from her palm. Boom! Following the loud crash, everyone was surprised to see that there was a layer of transparent barrier, shaking violently in midair. This mountain range was also tightly covered by a barrier. However, that layer of spirit formation was not stable. After a short moment, a crack appeared. Then with a bang sound, the enchantment shattered. Whoosh! In an instant, countless figures flew out from the mountain range. Chu Luyue narrowed her eyes and saw the densely packed figures heading toward them. It's the demonic beasts. Someone in the crowd behind her exclaimed. No, it's the divine beasts. Seven-leaf mystic snake, phoenix sky by Qi, flying snow fox god. The ones at the front were indeed the divine beasts. As for the ones at the back, Chu Luyue glanced at them and found that the lowest level was actually a 9th grade divine beasts. Danger! Everyone suddenly became nervous. There were so many demonic beasts, at least 100 of them. If they attacked as a group, then they would not be a match for them. After all, there were divine beasts among them. Chang Wanzhou took a step forward and was about to attack, but he was stopped by Chu Luyue. Wait! Chang Wanzhou looked at her strangely, but saw that not only was she not nervous at all, she was even smiling. It seemed like she had a card up her sleeve for everything in front of her. Chang Wanzhou calmed down and retreated behind her. Those demonic beasts were rapidly approaching. The atmosphere became more and more tense. Everyone unconsciously quieted down and stared at the scene in front of them. Outside the Divine Ruins world, 9th grade demonic beasts were already extremely precious existences, and divine beasts were even rarer. Now that they suddenly saw so many divine beasts attacking, everyone was naturally nervous. However, just when everyone thought that they were about to be surrounded by these demonic beasts, they saw them suddenly stop. At this time, they were only a few dozen steps away from Chu Luyue. Then, those demonic beasts all knelt on the ground. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Why did these demonic beasts seem to be so grateful and respectful to Chu Luyue? These are the demonic beasts raised by the Black Demon Cave. Chu Luyue said softly. Everyone was stunned. Chu Luyue walked forward. The closer she got, the more respectful the demonic beasts were. They all lowered their heads. Chu Luyue finally stopped in front of a blood-red cloud leopard. This was a female leopard. In its mouth there was a small ball. There were dark red bloodstains that dripped down drop by drop. Chu Luyue squatted down and stretched out her hand. The red cloud leopard subconsciously took a step back and quickly raised its head to look at Chu Luyue with deep respect in its eyes. Chu Luyue was stunned and looked back. Dumpling had actually followed her over at some point in time. At this time, she was curiously staring at the little thing in the red cloud leopard's mouth. Chu Luyue coughed. Dumpling stepped back. Ah, why? Dumpling opened her big black grape-like eyes and asked innocently. Chu Luyue held her forehead helplessly. The red cloud leopard is just an ordinary divine beast. You're too close and scared it. Dumpling was an ancient divine beast. Even if she changed into her human form and restrained her aura, the bloodline pressure from her bones couldn't be concealed. The reason why these demonic beasts were so respectful was partly because she opened the barrier and let them out, and partly because Dumpling was here. Dumpling? Oh. She curled her lips slightly. I just wanted to take a look. She had clearly tried her best to suppress her aura. Chu Luyue ignored her. As the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, who had already opened 5 meridians, Dumpling still didn't have the slightest idea of her own identity and strength. Most of the time she was still carefree, but this was fine. Tuanzi was still young, so she should be innocent and pure. Seeing Dumpling step back, the red cloud leopard let go of its mouth. A soft ball landed in Chu Luyue's palm. This was a small leopard that looked like it had just been born. However, there was a circle of wounds on its neck. The blood just now dripped from here. Chu Luyue frowned. This was left behind by the people of the Black Demon Cave. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2034. The wound was very deep and dripping with blood. White bones could be vaguely seen. It was obvious that the person who did this was ruthless, not even sparing this newborn little thing. Chu Liyue's eyes turned cold as she gently covered the leopard's wound with her palm. A faint reddish gold light flickered. When she raised her hand again, the little thing's wound had already scabbed over, and its aura had recovered significantly. It lay obediently in Chu Liyue's palm, turned over, and fell into a deep sleep. Chu Liyue and Dumpling had the same life contract, and the energy in her body had a strong restorative effect on these magical beasts. If Dumpling were to do it directly, the bloodline pressure would be too strong, and this little thing might not be able to bear it. Chu Liyue did it at the right time. The female leopard was nervous at first, but then showed a grateful expression. Although it was a divine beast, its bloodline was of a low level and had no human status. It knelt on the ground and let out a low whimper. It was gratitude and also submission. Chu Liyue glanced at it. As expected, she saw the marks on the neck of the red cloud leopard that could only be caused by admonishment. The people of the Black Demon Cave were already dead, but these magical beasts were still alive. It was obvious that it was as she had expected. They did not form contracts with these magical beasts, but only trapped them and used extreme methods to tame them. In this way, the number of magical beasts they could control would greatly exceed the number of people they had. She sent the little thing back. The red cloud leopard carefully stepped forward and picked up the little leopard. It looked up at Chu Liyue, tears falling from the corners of its eyes. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Don't worry, the people of the Black Demon Cave are already dead. From now on, no one will imprison and torture you. Chu Liyue looked up slightly. At a rough glance, the number of these magical beasts was close to 200. More importantly, there were still magical beasts rushing over from the forest behind. She let out a long sigh and said, "From now on, you should all go your separate ways." The most suitable place for them was naturally the unrestrained wilderness. The world is so big, where can't I go? However, after Chu Liyue finished saying those words, the magic beasts before him did not move. Chu Liyue was stunned. He waved his hand again. Go. They still didn't move. You, they want to follow you. Dumpling could not help but interject. Chu Liyue turned around. Follow me. She was not their master, so why should they follow her? Dumpling's eyes flickered as she said in a clear voice, "Yes. They have been trapped here for a long time. Now that you have rescued them, they are grateful and naturally want to follow you." Speaking of this, she suddenly thought of something and hurriedly ran over. The red string and golden bell on her head jingled, and a pair of white little feet ran very fast. All of the magical beasts took a step back in unison, then lowered their heads in reverence and respect. "Ayu." Dumpling hugged Chu Liyue's thigh and looked up at him. "Ayu, you can take them back, but you can't contract with them anymore. Ayu can only be mine." After thinking for a while, she bit her finger with some hesitation. "Oh right, and Zichen. Then he can only be ours. But Ayu can only love me the most." Chu Liyue did not know whether to laugh or cry. He pinched her chubby little face. "Don't worry, you alone are enough. How can I have other skills? Besides, other than Zichen, there shouldn't be any other magic beasts that can withstand your pressure." Speaking of which, it was really a coincidence. If either Zichen or Dumpling was not strong enough, or had a strong enough bloodline, they would not be able to coexist with each other. It wasn't easy for him to get to where he was today. Hearing his promise, Dumpling was relieved. "Hee, I knew Ayu was the best." Chu Liyue looked at the magical beasts hesitantly. Then just let them follow us." Dumpling waved her hand. "It's not like Peach Blossom Cove can't afford to raise them." Chu Liyue thought to himself. Although the Peach Blossom Cove was rich in resources, there were not many magical beasts, let alone divine beasts. It would be good to bring these magical beasts back. And in this way, Dumpling, will be the real boss in the future. Ha 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 ha. None of the magical beasts dared to disobey her command. Think about it. How awe-inspiring would that be? As long as they followed her, wouldn't her chances of defeating Zichen in the future be greater? At this thought, Dumpling's smile became even brighter, as if she could already imagine the wonderful life in the future. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows with a headache. Dumpling seemed to have forgotten that she was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, the kind that was personally appointed by the ancestors. As long as she wanted, the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan would follow her lead. They were the most honorable beings in the world. However, seeing that she was so happy, Chu Luiyue could not be bothered to remind her. She would naturally remember in the future. She pondered for a moment and finally nodded. Then, let's go back together. Hearing this, the magical beast's eyes were filled with joy, although the pressure on Dumpling's body was too strong, almost making them not dare to approach her. After all, she was a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix with the purest bloodline. Such a noble existence was naturally attractive to other magical beasts. If they could follow her, it would be a great blessing. Moreover, Chu Luiyue had saved them. Was there a better home than this? Therefore, they were very happy about this matter. Therefore, after subduing a group of cultivation geniuses, Chu Luiyue had another group of high-level magical beasts behind her. Looking at the group behind her that had expanded by a lot, Chu Luiyue was a little dazed for a moment. Didn't she just want to see what was going on with the door at Peach Blossom Dock? How long had it been? She actually brought so many people and beasts back for no reason? At this moment, the void not far away suddenly shook. Following this, two figures walked out from it. Chu Luiyue looked back and was slightly shocked. Sini Lin Qifei? Why are you here? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2035. The two figures who walked out were none other than Sin Yi and Lin Qifei, who had been separated from her before. Upon seeing Chu Luiyue, the two of them looked at each other and revealed a look of relief. Then, the two moved and came to Chu Luiyue and bowed together. Greetings, master. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. No need to be so polite. But you. She had just walked out of the door realm, and didn't even do much. She had just collected a group of demonic beasts, and they had appeared here. This was obviously not a coincidence. After the chaos in the door realm of Peach Blossom Dock, the two of us were separated from Master and His Highness. Since then, we have been looking for the two of you. We used some methods and found some clues. Please forgive us for being late, Master. In just a few sentences, he left behind all the things that happened in the middle of the story. But Chu Luiyue knew that they must have spent a lot of effort to find her so quickly. She nodded slightly and said, I'm fine. It's good that you're safe. Sini looked around. Your Highness. Actually, when he had just arrived, he had already noticed the situation around him. Master was here, but His Highness wasn't. And there were many more people beside Master. Chang Wanzhou was among them. In addition, there was a large group of demonic beasts with strong auras. The scene was a little chaotic. Even someone as intelligent as him was momentarily unable to understand what had happened. Chu Luiyue explained. He went to the Red Moon Desert and will rush back soon. As for these people, they are all from outside the Divine Ruins world. These demonic beasts were raised here by the Black Demon Cave. Now that the Black Demon Cave has been destroyed, I wanted to let them go, but they wanted to follow me. So I decided to bring them back to Peach Blossom Dock. Everyone. Bringing so many divine beasts back for fun. Listen. Is this something a human would say? A rare trace of surprise flashed across Xin Yi's, usually indifferent and calm face. Lin Qifei, who was at the side, could not help but ask in shock. The Black Demon Cave has been destroyed? How could so many things happen in such a short period of time? Chu Luiyue chuckled. It's a long story. Let's go back and talk about it. Do you know where this is? Will it be troublesome to return to Peach Blossom Cove from here? Sini replied. Master, this is Wanfeng Ridge. It's not very famous, and is just a small place. There's a long river outside, and it's very secluded. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. She had never heard of this place before. The Divine Ruins world was vast, so it was impossible for her to know everything. After all, the Black Demon Cave had carefully selected this area, so it was naturally more remote and difficult to find. Chu Liyue smiled. In that case, it must have been hard for you to find this place so quickly. Sini cupped his fists. After you and His Highness left, the gate realm was sealed. The two of us couldn't follow you. It's all thanks to fourth young Master Lin that we were able to find this place. Chu Liyue widened her eyes and looked at Lin Qifei in surprise. Oh, Sun Yi's words proved that Lin Qifei had really helped. Qifei, you know this place? Lin Qifei shook his head. Lord Sun Yi is too kind. Actually, this matter is mainly due to Lord Sun Yi's efforts. I merely constructed this transportation formation. Chu Liyue raised her brows. With Sun Yi's ability, constructing a transportation formation was not difficult. In the end, he had asked Lin Qifei to do it. As if seeing her confusion, Sun Yi explained. Your appearance here was deduced by fourth young Master Lin, based on the changes in power of the Xian formation above the gate realm. I merely lent him a hand. This time, Chu Liyue was truly shocked. Lin Qifei actually had such shocking abilities? This place is indeed some distance from the Peach Blossom Cove. Sun Yi added. Chu Liyue understood. To construct a transportation formation in an unfamiliar place, a mystic master had to know the exact location and personally do it. This was probably why Sun Yi had asked Lin Qifei to construct the transportation formation. With Lin Qifei's current strength, it might not be a problem for him to construct a small transportation formation on his own. But to construct a complete and grand transportation formation, he still needed external help. At that time, Sun Yi had acted, but in the end, the main credit for this matter still fell on Lin Qifei's shoulders. She looked at Lin Qifei and said sincerely, Sun Yi is right. Sun Yi is right. This merit is indeed yours. Qifei, you really didn't disappoint me. There were probably only a few people in the entire Divine Ruins who had such ability. Lin Qifei raised his head and looked at her with bright eyes and undisguised respect and admiration on his face. He also revealed a faint smile. His figure was thin, and his temperament was like bamboo. His distant eyes were always calm and unperturbed. This smile instantly brightened his complexion. It was like a cool breeze brushing through a bamboo forest, pure and elegant. I can't repay the favor of saving my life. Besides, moreover, from the very beginning, she had appreciated him very much. This kind of trust and admiration was hard to find in this lifetime. Lin Qifei cupped his fists. It is Qifei's honor to be of service to Master. Chu Liyue was also very happy. Since you're all here, let's return to the Peach Blossom Cove first. This would save them a lot of effort in finding the way. Yes. Sun Yi nodded. Shortly after, his gaze turned and landed on Chang Wanzhou. His eyes flickered, seemingly a little surprised. Exalted Goddess? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2036. If she remembered correctly, Chang Wanzhou had always been outside the Divine Ruins world. How did he break through to the Exalted God realm? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips slightly and glanced at Sun Yi without saying anything. Chu Liyue chuckled. Yes, I'm also quite surprised. I didn't expect little Zhou to break through to the Exalted God realm in such a short time. His aura was hidden very well. If he hadn't shown his true realm in the fight with Mo Shiqian, Chu Liyue would probably still think that he was at the peak of the 9th stage. However, little Zhou is extremely talented and has a lot of opportunities. It's expected that he can do this. Chu Liyue said softly. Actually, she knew where Sun Yi's doubts came from. She had the same curiosity in her heart. However, she knew very well that Chang Wanzhou's body was indeed different from others. There was a terrifying power sealed in his body. Previously, she had only helped to release a small portion of it, and his strength had increased greatly. He was probably able to break through to the Exalted God realm because of this. When she had time after returning, she would have to ask in detail. Sun Yi nodded and didn't ask further. Master's words make sense. Let's go back now. Chu Liyue turned around to take a look. These people were still fine. But these magical beasts, there were indeed too many of them. There were at least 400 to 500 of them now. A third of them were divine beasts. Their auras were astonishing. As if seeing her worry, Cini said, "Master, don't worry. Although this teleportation array was just created by the two of us, it's extremely stable. It shouldn't be a problem to send everyone back." Hearing this, Chulua was relieved. Okay. Everyone, including the magical beasts, stepped into the teleportation array one after another. Just as Cini said, although this teleportation array was new, it was very stable. It was still stable even after carrying so many people and magical beasts. In the dark space, a few pearls floated quietly, scattering a faint glow. Chulua looked at Cini thoughtfully. Sensing her gaze, Cini also looked over. "Is there anything Master wants to ask?" Chulua nodded and spoke with some hesitation. "Cini, I remember that you are most proficient in Chimanduanjia, formations, and mechanisms. When did you have such a deep understanding of profound formations?" This was not a thing. Cini smiled calmly. That usually indifferent and calm face, because of this smile, became a bit more lively. "Master, Cini is also a cultivator. He wasn't lying when he said he was good at it. But he didn't say that he wasn't good at anything else. He had followed Chulua for many years, so at this moment, Chulua understood his meaning with just a look and a sentence. She couldn't help but be stunned. Cini wasn't wrong. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't 13 taught by him? The other members of the 13U Guard were also exceptionally respectful towards Cini. In this world where the strong were revered, they definitely wouldn't respect Cini so much just because of seniority. He could only be strong enough. Chulua stroked her chin. She had always thought that she knew Cini well enough. But now, what she saw was perhaps only the tip of the iceberg. However, Cini's loyalty to her was indisputable. She smiled in relief, her eyes bright. "That's true. Then let's spar another day." Cini nodded. Cini awaits Master's instructions. Peach Blossom Cove. After a heavy snowfall, the entire Peach Blossom Cove was covered in silver. However, the peach blossoms outside the city were in full bloom. The pinkish-white petals complemented the snow, making it look like a painting. Manor backyard. Sanson was sitting in the room, holding a brush in one hand, and checking an account book in front of him. There was a happy smile on his chubby cheeks, and his pair of small eyes had already narrowed into slits in joy. Anyone could see his joy and excitement at this moment. When 13 entered, he happened to see this scene. "Third brother, why are you so happy?" Actually, when he saw the account book in Sanson's hand, 13 had already guessed why he was so happy, but he still asked symbolically. When Sanson heard his voice, he chuckled without even looking up. "Oh, 13 is here? Quick, take a seat. Your third brother, I am settling accounts." As he spoke, he sighed with emotion. TSK. These aristocratic families and sects are indeed generous. Just the profits of these few days have already surpassed the profits of the past 3 months. Without the oppression of the Black Sword sect, the profits they were making were truly impressive. Although Master had only chosen a few families, they had all come with the intention of befriending them. In addition, the quality of the medicinal herbs and pills in Peach Blossom Cove were indeed excellent. So these people were very generous. Sanson had been so busy recently that his feet barely touched the ground. But he didn't feel tired at all with this account book in hand. 13 asked curiously, "Third brother doesn't use an abacus?" "The abacus is too slow." Sanson finally retracted his gaze and chuckled. "Little 13, don't you know that when your third brother looks at the account book, the bigger the account book, the less I like to use an abacus?" 13 really didn't know. Although he had followed Master for a long time, he had spent most of his time with Cini and the others. Among the 13U guards, only Sanson had a special fondness for things like calculating accounts and making money. He didn't have much time and opportunities to spend with 13. Moreover, 13 was young in the past, so Sanson wouldn't mention these things in front of him. As for the others, he was simply too lazy to mention them. Therefore, 13 only knew about this matter when he heard it from his own mouth. "Third brother's calculations are that good?" 13 quickly reacted and revealed a look of admiration. Sanson enjoyed this look very much. Haha. Actually, it's not that good. This thing is innate. He gently stroked the account book in his hand and said with a smile. Little 13, with these transactions, RU residents will be able to gain a firm foothold in the world of God in the future. If you want anything in the future, just ask third brother. Sanson said these words in a rich and imposing manner. But this was also because he had the confidence. The battle between Chu Luiyue and Yi Wentao could be considered as killing the chicken to warn the monkey, letting everyone know that the Yu residence in the Peach Blossom Dock was not to be trifled with. And these business transactions were also beneficial for them, to build a good relationship with the various aristocratic families. More friends meant more paths. Who knew how many people wanted to climb up to the Yu residence? After all, although the Yu residence had just been established, they had many backers behind them. In the current world of God, who would want to provoke them? And to support the establishment and development of such a large aristocratic family, not only did they need enough experts, they also needed enough resources. Sanson had also saved some money previously, but he didn't expect Master to cause such a big commotion. Now that there were so many people in the Peach Blossom Dock, the expenses in all aspects were not small. But fortunately, the future was bright. Hey 13, why did you think of looking for third brother today? Only then did 13 react. Oh right. I'm here to report to third brother that Master and the others are back. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2037. Sanson was delighted. Why didn't you say so earlier? He quickly put away the account book in his hand and was about to go out to welcome them. 13 quickly said, Hey, third brother, wait. Master and the others are at the city gate now. He said there's no need to welcome them. He only asked third brother to arrange some accommodations and find a few suitable mountains. Accommodations? Find mountains? Sanson was stunned. What are they for? 13 scratched his head. I'm not too sure. I only heard that Master brought some people and magical beasts back. What? Sanson didn't expect to get this answer. The corner of his mouth twitched. Some time ago, Big Brother said that there was a problem in the Gate Realm, so Master and His Highness went to take a look. However, something unexpected happened, and the two of them disappeared together. For this reason, the eldest brother took Lin Jifei to look for him. Now that they heard that Master was back, they were naturally happy. But why did he bring people and magical beasts back? He thought for a moment and said, I see. I'll send someone to arrange it. With that he walked outside. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly thought of something and turned back. That's not right. If the people and magical beasts came together, those magical beasts should be the contracted magical beasts of the human race. There shouldn't be any extra places. Why did Master mean that the people and magical beasts were separated? 13 was confused. I don't know about this. He didn't have time to check it out. He only heard the news and quickly came to find Sanson. After all, Master and Big Brother weren't here. Sanson was the most senior in the 13 U guards, and he was familiar enough with this place. He was the most suitable person for this kind of thing. Sanson thought for a moment. Forget it. It's not a big deal. Peach Blossom Cove is so big. It's easy to find a few empty places. Before he could finish his sentence, a loud noise suddenly came from outside. Sanson looked outside curiously. What's going on? Swoosh. There was a sound of something breaking through the air. Sanson's heart skipped a beat. He saw something flying toward him. He immediately mobilized the power in his body and was about to attack. Sanson, don't move. A clear and familiar voice. Master. Sanson quickly restrained his aura when he heard this voice. The next moment that thing pounced over. Sanson was thrown into his arms. He staggered and almost fell down. He hurriedly held onto the door beside him and barely managed to stand still. Only then did he take the time to look down, only to see that there was actually one hanging in front of him. Thunder Tigan. This Thunder Tigan was biting the clothes in front of his chest. Sanson's eyes widened. This, hula, the sound of wings flapping could be heard. Sanson subconsciously looked up and saw a black gold divine vulture charging over. Since her master did not allow her to attack, Sanson had no choice but to take out her account book to defend herself. However, as soon as he took it out, the golden crow divine vulture swooped down and snatched it away without a word. Sigh. My, slap. Sanson was about to catch up when something suddenly fell from above and hit his head. It was warm and soft. Something seemed to be pulling at his hair. Sanson raised his hand and grabbed the ball. It was only the size of a palm and a red ball. At this moment, it was looking at him innocently and curiously with a pair of black eyes. There was also a ball of Sanson's hair wrapped around its claws. His scalp was aching. Red cloud leopard. Sanson's forehead twitched. In just one encounter, the account book was snatched, his clothes were torn, and even his hair was pulled. What was going on? Very good. In the future, we will work together like this. Our combat strength will greatly increase. Dumpling's childish voice sounded. Sanson looked up and saw a few figures walking in. The person in front was Chu Luiyue with a helpless look on his face. Next to him was Dumpling with a face full of excitement and fighting spirit. All of you come back first. With that order, the Thunder Tigan in front of Sanson finally let go. The black gold divine vulture circled around and threw down the account book. The two of them quickly retreated and stopped 5 steps away from Dumpling respectfully. Dumpling waved her hand and said with a smile, "There's improvement." Hearing Dumpling's praise, the two beasts were very excited. Even the little red cloud leopard lying in Sanson's palm instantly stood up with its eyes lit up. Sanson was confused. "Master, what is this?" Pfft. A strange sound was heard. Sanson's voice stopped abruptly. He slowly lowered his head with a stiff face. A pile of fresh excrement was lying quietly in his palm, and the culprit seemed to have realized something at this moment. It turned its head and looked at him pitifully. The scene fell into a strange silence. "That cough, it was injured some time ago. I gave it some medicine, so its metabolism has been quite good recently." The corner of Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched, and he said sympathetically. Sanson looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. Master was going to abandon him for such a small thing?" Chu Luiyue bent his finger and gently flicked Dumpling's head. "Why aren't you apologizing to Sanson?" Dumpling went forward obediently. Her 2 small hands were crossed in front of her body. She held her small belly and bent down to apologize. "Brother Sanson, I'm sorry. Dumpling knows she's wrong. I dare to do it again next time. It's rare to find such fun. How can I give up so easily?" It was not easy to get Ayu to agree that she would be in charge of these little guys in the future. Dumpling said silently in her heart, "How can ordinary people understand the joy of being the boss?" Chu Luiyue silently glanced at her. This little trick, however, Sanson did not know what Dumpling was thinking at this time. It was not a big deal, so he was not really angry. Dumpling was so cute. He felt sorry for her. How could he bear to say anything harsh? "Oh, our Dumpling is the best. No need to apologize, no need to apologize. Brother Sanson just needs to wash his hands. As long as Dumpling is happy." Dumpling immediately stood up, her big eyes sparkling. "I know Brother Sanson is the best." Her words made Sanson so happy that she didn't notice the slyness in Tuanzi's eyes. Chu Luiyue sighed in his heart. Since some people wanted to die, they could not blame her for not helping them. "Shursan, help your third brother take down the little thing." Chu Luiyue gave Shursan a signal. Shursan immediately reacted and went forward to pick up the little red cloud leopard. "Sanson, you go and clean it up first," Chu Luiyue said. Sanson came back to his senses and responded. Just as he was about to leave, he pointed at those few and said, "These are all brought back by Master this time?" Chu Luiyue looked at him with sympathy. "No. More than this." Sanson suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness. "More than this? Then how many?" Suddenly, his eyes narrowed and he gasped. "What are these?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2038. A dark mass had appeared behind Chu Luiyue at some point in time. Countless magical beasts had gathered together, and all of them were looking in this direction. Curiosity, surprise, joy, excitement. Perhaps because of Dumpling's presence, they didn't dare to get too close. They were still huddled together at the back, but it wasn't hard to see that there were indeed a lot of them. Sanson's mouth twitched. Master, what did you do this time? Why did you bring back so many fiends? And many of them seemed to be divine beasts. Chu Liyue turned around and raised her voice. What's going on? Didn't I tell you to wait outside? Hearing her words, the fiends immediately took a step back obediently. But after spending some time together, they had a good understanding of Chu Liyue and knew that she wasn't really angry. In addition, due to various reasons, they had a natural affinity with Chu Liyue. Even after hearing her reprimand them, they were still happy and wanted to lean forward. Hence, although the fiends quietened down, they still gathered together and refused to leave. Master, those people have been arranged. At this moment, Cindy walked over. Chu Liyue nodded. That's good. There were only a few dozen people in total. There were many empty residences in Peach Blossom Cove, so she could just bring them there. Moreover, they were all quite talented and would be able to adapt quickly after coming here. There was no need to worry too much. The key was these fiends. Big brother. When Sanson saw Cinyi, his eyes welled up and he felt wronged. Cinyi's gaze turned slightly as he glanced at him indifferently. You're not allowed to take half a step closer until you're done bathing. Sanson was speechless. Big brother. You're my big brother. Your third brother is being bullied. Not only are you not concerned, but you're also so disdainful. As if sensing Sanson's resentful gaze, Cinyi glanced at him nobly and narrowed his eyes slightly. Make a new copy of the account book. Master still has to look at it in the future. Sanson's hands trembled slightly as he held the account book. He finally couldn't help but shout. My hands are clean. Cinyi's expression was calm. Is that so? Sanson, 13 whispered. Third brother, why don't you go first? Otherwise, I won't be able to get past Big Brother alone. Sanson was extremely indignant. The world is so big, but there is no place for me, Sanson. Around the corner, Shifang, who had rushed over when he heard the news, looked delighted. Hey, third brother, you can come to my place. I've just planted some vegetables recently, and they need some fertilizer. Scram! Sanson took a deep breath, then used its fastest speed to turn around and leave. Shifang sighed regretfully. The scarlet cloud leopard is a divine beast. This fertilizer is very precious. Third brother is wasting it like this. Chu Liyue. Cinyi, since Sanson is busy, I'll leave this matter to you. You should be familiar with this place by now. Based on Cinyi's personality, he should have already begun to fully understand this place when she first chose it. Speaking of which, perhaps even Sanson didn't know as much as Cinyi. Cinyi nodded. Yes. With hundreds of magical beasts arriving at once, it was indeed a little crowded. But fortunately, they were very grateful and submissive to their master and Dumpling, so it wasn't troublesome. Under Cinyi's lead, these magical beasts quickly left. Dumpling wanted to join in the fun, so Chu Liyue allowed her to follow. The courtyard finally quieted down. Chu Liyue turned around and saw that 13 was still standing in the same spot. The little scarlet cloud leopard was still lying in his hand. 13? Chu Liyue walked over. Master, it seems to have fallen asleep. 13 said nervously. As if he was worried that he would wake the little thing up, he deliberately lowered his voice. Chu Liyue turned around and saw that the female leopard was indeed still waiting outside the door. She chuckled. You just have to send it to its mother. 13 nodded and hurriedly walked over. Looking at his back, Chu Liyue's lips curved slightly. 13 seemed to be about to break through again. You are. A deep and familiar voice sounded. Chu Liyue glanced sideways. Taizu, you're back. Although Taizu usually stayed at the Yu estate, he had left for a long time, because he said that he wanted to refine an origin tool. Taizu chuckled and stroked his beard. Yesterday, I was wondering if I should go look for you. But I didn't expect you to come back today. As he spoke, he looked around. Rongxiu didn't come back with you? Yes, he had some matters to attend to, so he went back to Red Moon Desert first. Chu Luiyue replied. Taizu nodded in understanding. Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't seem to be injured, he sighed in relief. Where have you been all this time? Chu Luiyue briefly explained what had happened at Black Demon Cave. Taizu was shocked and took a long time to come back to his senses. I see. So, everyone else in Black Demon Cave is dead, and only Emo Shirchian is left? Chu Luiyue's expression froze. This person is cunning and ruthless. He is indeed not easy to deal with. But now that he has lost his physical body, it should be difficult for him to move. Taizu nodded, and looked like he wanted to say something. Chu Luiyue was a little puzzled. Taizu, do you have something to say? Taizu hesitated for a while before saying, I plan to leave Peach Blossom Dock for a while. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Where are you going? Taizu's expression was firm as he said, You probably don't know that Tang Ke's tomb has appeared during this period of time. Digression. I only fell asleep at 4 in the morning yesterday, and have been having nightmares. I don't know how many times I woke up and slept. I'm splitting open. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.